After remarrying the scandalous crown prince, my childhood sweetheart who forced me to be his concubine cried himself regretful. On the eve of my wedding, Su Yuten's white moonlight was betrothed to the notorious scandalous crown prince of the capital. Unable to bear seeing his beloved jump into a pit of fire, he rushed to crash the wedding. That very night, the two of them bowed to heaven and earth and entered the bridal chamber. The entire capital waited with bated breath to laugh at me and the Jiang family. Yet who would have guessed that the next day, the crown prince climbed over my courtyard wall, leaning against it lazily as he looked at me. Husband's debts are paid by the wife. Su Yuten stole my betrothed. So I want you to compensate me by becoming my crown princess. Is that too much to ask? I nodded my head. It's not too much. I'll marry you. Clearly not expecting me to agree to such an absurd condition. Qi Shenglin gaped at me for a long moment before stammering out a response. Why you said it yourself. Don't go back on your word. I'll come to marry you in 3 days. No takebacks. With that, he hopped down from the wall in a hurry, as if fearing I might change my mind. He even stumbled a little on his way out, nearly tripping over his own feet. I watched the scene with amusement, realizing he was not as worthless as the rumors made him out to be. On the contrary, he was kind of endearing. Shortly after Qi Shenglin left, Su Yuten arrived. My expression instantly turned frosty. Mr. Su, you're newlywed. Instead of staying home to accompany your wife, what are you doing here? Su Yuten's face stiffened, forcing an ingratiating smile. Yao Yao, I never wanted things to turn out this way. But Yang Yang is gentle and soft-spoken. I couldn't bear to watch her marry that libertine, or her entire life would be ruined. So he could bear to watch me and the entire Jiang family become the laughingstock of the capital. From the moment he crashed that wedding, the bond between us was severed forever. Please leave, Mr. Su, our engagement is off. Su Yuten frowned, reaching out to grab my hand. Yao Yao, stop being childish. Even if I'm married to her, it won't affect our relationship. Yang Yang is so kind-hearted, she'll never make things difficult for you if you marry into the family. You'll just have to endure a little humiliation as a concubine first. Once you give birth to a son or daughter, I'll promote you to secondary wife. You and Yang Yang will both be my wives, and I'll never favor one over the other. The audacity of him, asking me, the proud young lady of the Jiang family, to be his concubine. Even if I were willing, the ancestors of the Jiang family would never allow it. I stepped back half a pace, staring at him coldly. No daughter of the Jiang family will ever be a concubine. Seeing me refuse, Su Yuten's expression turned displeased. It's just an empty title. Besides, even as a concubine, I'll never let anyone look down on you. Why must you make things so difficult for me? I was making things difficult for him. I almost laughed out of anger. Who was the one who had pulled such a ridiculous stunt as crashing a wedding on the eve of his own engagement, marrying another woman, and turning me and the entire Jiang family into the joke of the town? And he had the nerve to blame me for making things hard for him. I looked at him with disdain, repeating my words. I said it. No daughter of the Jiang family will ever be a concubine. Having his pride trampled on repeatedly, Su Yuten finally lost his temper. His face darkened. Jiang Shu Yao, you're simply unreasonable. Everyone knows how close we've been since childhood, that you've long been mine. Without me, who else would ever marry you? With that, he flung his sleeves and stormed off in a rage. I trembled all over with anger, a wave of sorrow washing over my heart. I knew then that the Su Yuten who had once loved me with his whole heart, who could never bear to see me suffer the slightest grievance, was gone forever. The man standing before me now was nothing but Lin Wanyan's husband. I should have let go long ago, the moment he ignored me for Lin Wanyan, trampling my sincere heart under his feet. But I had been unwilling to accept it. I had shared over a decade of memories with him. I refused to believe it meant less than the mere 6 months he had known Lin Wanyan. Fate had proven me wrong. Qi Shenglin gave me no time to regret my decision. The very next day, the Qi family arrived at our doorstep to propose marriage, bearing 108 chests of betrothal gifts that filled my room from floor to ceiling. My parents did not approve of Qi Shenglin, urging me to think it over again. But my mind was made up. If I couldn't have love, then I would have power. I had to have something. Chi Shenglin might have a bad reputation, but he was the crown prince of Darky. If the legitimate daughter of the Lin family had not refused to marry him, this marriage would never have fallen to Lin Wanyan in the first place. I was just about to order the servants to move the betrothal gifts to the storeroom when Su Yuten walked in, with Lin Wanyan in tow, seeing the mountain of gifts. The two of them jumped to the wrong conclusion. Su Yuten lifted his chin, wearing a smug I knew it look. Lin Wanyan's eyes flashed with greed. Sister, are all these your dowry? Lin Wanyan was the illegitimate daughter of Master Su, born of a drunken tryst with a maid. She had never been valued in the Lin family. On her wedding day, Mistress Lin had sent her off with nothing but a single chest of copper coins. I frowned, denying it flatly. They're not, but Su Yuten scoffed, cut the act. Yesterday you said you wouldn't marry him, and today you've already prepared your dowry. Yes, sister, once you marry into the family, we'll be one big happy family. Brother Yuten, didn't you prepare a gift for sister? Hurry and take it out. Lin Wanyan tugged at his sleeve, urging him on. As she moved, a flash of green caught my eye. I stared at it, frozen in place for a long moment. The Lu family had a heirloom jade bracelet, meant for their future daughter-in-law. I had dropped hints about it to Su Yuten countless times, but he had always evaded the subject, refusing to give it to me. I never imagined it would end up on Lin Wanyan's wrist. Noticing my gaze, Lin Wanyan deliberately pulled her sleeve up a little higher, flaunting the bracelet for all to see. Reminded by Lin Wanyan, Su Yuten scowled, pulling a wooden hairpin from his bosom and tossing it at me. He wore a look as if he were bestowing some great treasure upon me. Here, take it. Looking at the shoddily crafted hairpin, its paint already chipped, I let out a cold laugh. He was so generous with Lin Wanyan, yet so stingy with me. I held the hairpin out to him, pushing it back. No need, such a fine gift would be better suited for your Miss Lin. At my words, Su Yuten's face instantly turned ashen. Furious at being rejected, he snatched the hairpin back and threw it out the window. If you don't want it, then it's garbage, Lin Wanyan pouted, stamping her foot feignedly. Sister, this was specially picked out by Brother Yuten and me. It's a token of our sincere regard. Oh right, sister, you'll be marrying into the family in a few days. This is a wedding dress I sewed by hand for you. Please accept it. With that, she took the pink wedding dress from the maid's hands and held it out to me. I laughed out of anger. Pink was the color reserved for concubines' wedding dresses. Staring at the triumphant look on Lin Wanyan's face, I finally understood their true purpose in coming here today. They wanted to give me a deliberate slap in the face. They ought to have asked if I would allow it first. In front of Su Yuten, I emphasized my words once again. I said it before our engagement is over. If you two have nothing else to say, please leave. But it was clear the two of them paid no heed to my words. Lin Wanyan grabbed the dress and tried to drag me toward the inner room. Sister, don't say such angry words. I'm not sure if the dress fits. Why don't you try it on first? Irritated, I shook her hand off. Get lost. Don't touch me. I had only meant to push her away gently, using no real force. But Lin Wanyan, clutching the dress, let out an exaggerated shriek and stumbled backward, landing hard on her bottom. Tears quickly welled up in her eyes. I'm sorry, sister. I only wanted you to try on the dress. I had no other intentions. Seeing this, Su Yuten flew into a rage, shoving me hard. Jiang Shu Yao, Yang Yang stayed up 2 whole nights to make that dress for you. She meant well, and this is how you repay her, a jealous shrew like you. With no shred of kindness in your heart, you deserve to die alone. You'll end up an old maid for the rest of your life. With that, he lifted Lin Wanyan into his arms and stormed out without a backward glance. As she was carried away, Lin Wanyan looked back at me, curling her lips into a triumphant smirk. The sight reminded me of the first time we had met. Back then, she had still been just a lowly illegitimate daughter in the Lin family. At a banquet, she had been bullied and ordered around like a maid by her legitimate elder sister. When she accidentally spilled wine on her sister's dress, she had been slapped hard across the face and forced to kneel in public. Su Yuten had taken pity on her, stepping in to defend her from the bullying. Later, fearing she would be targeted again by her sister, Su Yuten had always gone out of his way to look after her. giving her the best of everything, all the delicious treats and fun toys first. I had been jealous countless times because of this, but he had always laughed it off, saying, "I just feel sorry for Yang Yang. I want to help her." At first, I had truly believed his kindness toward Lin Wanyan was merely out of sympathy. That was until the day Lin Wanyan had been forced to marry Qi Shenglin. And Su Yuten had rushed to crash her wedding, afraid of any further delays. He had married her on the very same day, turning their relationship into a done deal that could never be undone. Only then did I realize that without my noticing, Lin Wanyan had long since carved out a place in his heart. I had been naive to think his special attention toward her had stemmed purely from goodwill. The day before my wedding happened to be the annual lantern festival of our dynasty, the day I loved most of all. Every year before, Su Yuten had always accompanied me to release lanterns by the river. This year was the first time I had come alone, but when I walked onto the street, I found it completely empty, all the street vendors nowhere to be seen. Confused, I was about to turn back when I heard two women chatting animatedly nearby. "Master Su is truly generous. I heard he bought out the entire street's lanterns just to make his wife happy. Tell me about it. If I were Mrs. Su, I'd be so touched I'd cry." And that's not even the half of it. Master Su even dared to offend the crown prince for her, and was willing to let the young lady of the Jiang family be his concubine. If I could meet a man as good as him, I'd willingly eat vegetarian food for 3 whole years. Hearing this, I curled my lips into a cold, mocking smile. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar voice called out from behind me, "Sister." I turned around instinctively, only to see Su Yuten and Lin Wanyan standing not far away. She held a lantern in her hand, running toward me excitedly. "Sister, are you here to release lanterns too?" Su Yuten was still angry about what had happened yesterday, glaring at me with a huff when he saw me. Lin Wanyan held out the lantern in her hand, flaunting it in front of me. "I'm sorry, sister. Brother Yuten bought all the lanterns on this street. Why don't you take this one?" "No need." I stepped back half a pace, wary of her trying to frame me again. Besides, I had never been in the habit of using things that others had already touched, whether they were objects or people. At my refusal, Su Yuten's expression turned icy cold, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The young lady of the Jiang family is far too noble to accept our humble gift. Let's leave her be, Yang Yang. Come, let's go to the river." With that, he took Lin Wanyan's hand and walked toward the riverside. As soon as the two of them left, a man dressed in the attire of a steward approached me. "Miss Jiang, the crown prince sent me to give you this." I stared in astonishment at the lantern in his hand, shaped like a winding stream. Its base bore a bold, unrestrained character yarrow written in brushstrokes. It was the most exquisite lantern I had ever seen. In the end, I could not bear to set it afloat on the river, so I brought it home with me. The next day, my maid roused me at dawn to comb my hair and help me into my wedding dress. Only then did the reality finally sink in. I was truly getting married, not to Su Yuten, my childhood sweetheart whom I had pined for years, but to Qi Shenglin, the notorious libertine crown prince of the capital. To say I was not nervous would have been a lie. I took a deep breath. Now that I had made my decision, I would forge ahead unwaveringly, no matter what the future held. Once I was fully dressed, the wedding procession arrived, but to my surprise, it was not Qi Shenglin who led it, it was Su Yuten. Staring at the small pink sedan chair and the procession of fewer than 20 men, disbelief flashed across my face. I thought I had made myself perfectly clear to Su Yuten. I had returned all the betrothal gifts from the Su family. What was he playing at today? Before I could even ask, Su Yuten's face darkened the moment he saw me in my phoenix coronet and red bridal robes. "Jiang Shu Yao, who allowed you to dress like this?" "I'm taking a concubine today, not a wife. Hurry up and change out of that ridiculous outfit at once." His unwarranted rebuke ignited my anger in an instant. "Su Yuten, I've told you countless times our engagement is over. The man I'm marrying today is not you. My husband will be here soon. Take your people and leave at once." Su Yuten scoffed disdainfully. "Enough with the act. If you keep this up, I'll really walk away. Yang Yang entered my household first, so she is rightfully my principal wife. And I already told you, I'll promote you to secondary wife once you give me a son or daughter. Are you really that eager to climb the ranks? I rolled my eyes. This was nothing but his own delusion. When had I ever agreed to such terms? I was about to retort when the sound of musical instruments suddenly erupted behind me. Su Yuten glanced over his shoulder, frowning in confusion. Is someone else from the Jiang family getting married today? No sooner had the words left his mouth than Qi Shenglin galloped forward on horseback, taking the lead as he reined in his steed before me. Spotting Su Yuten and his ragtag procession behind him, he grinned lazily. Well, Master Su, here to steal my crown princess again. At the sight of him, Su Yuten's eyes widened in shock, his mind struggling to process what was happening. Suddenly, as if a thought had struck him, he eyed Qi Shenglin warily. I was about to ask your Royal Highness, what brings you here with such a large entourage today? Qi Shenglin flicked his horsewhip, wearing a cheeky grin that was impossible to dislike. What else? To pick up my bride, of course. Su Yuten froze for a moment, the implications of his words slowly sinking in. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. What did you mean earlier, when you called her your crown princess? Qi Shenglin curled his lips into a mocking smirk, about to answer only for me to cut him off. Su Yuten, I said firmly, he is my husband, the man I am marrying today is him. That's impossible. Su Yuten paled, the words bursting out of him in a near shout. We were betrothed to each other since childhood. How could you possibly marry someone else? How ironic that he still remembered our betrothal, yet he was the one who had broken it first by marrying another woman. When his gaze met mine, a flash of panic crossed Su Yuten's face as the realization hit him. The terror of losing something precious washed over him, and he pointed at Qi Shenglin, his voice urgent. Yao, I know you're angry with me for marrying Yang, but you can't be so reckless as to marry him. Do you even know what kind of man he is? This will ruin you. At his words, a flicker of displeasure crossed Qi Shenglin's eyes. I was growing tired of his constant interference. Su Yuten, I know exactly what I'm doing, I said calmly. I am not marrying him on a whim. If you truly care about me, you will stop this nonsense right now. Qi Shenglin looked amused by my words, casting a scornful glance at Su Yuten. Did you hear that, Master Su? Just then, the matchmaker hurried over to urge us along. The auspicious hour was fast approaching. I stepped past Su Yuten, ready to board the sedan chair, but Su Yuten suddenly lunged forward and grabbed my arm, his voice desperate. Yao, come with me. I will never let you marry him. Qi Shenglin narrowed his eyes, his fingers tightening instinctively around his horsewhip. Master Su, are you really foolish enough to try crashing my wedding again? Su Yuten's eyes glistened with unshed tears. So what if I am? Gone was Qi Shenglin's playful smirk. He let out a cold snort. Then you'd better first ask the whip in my hand if it agrees. The air hung thick with tension, charged with an unspoken sense of impending violence. Su Yuten had already gravely offended the crown prince once before because of Lin Wanyan. Seizing the opportunity, the steward of the Lu family rushed forward, attempting to drag him away. Young master, don't be rash. We can discuss this when we get home. Get out of my way. Su Yuten roughly shook him off, reaching out to me with a pleading look in his eyes. Yao, as long as you come with me, I'll give you anything you want, anything. I stared at him coldly. All I want is for you to stay away from me from now on. Su Yuten's eyes widened in shock, as if he could not believe his ears. By now, Qi Shenglin had grown thoroughly impatient. He shot a meaningful glance at his guards. Two burly guards stepped forward at once, pinning Su Yuten firmly to the ground. As the wedding sedan chair swayed farther and farther away, Su Yuten let out a heart-wrenching roar of despair. Yao, don't go. Yao, come back to me. I did not look back, not even once. The moment he had bowed to heaven and earth with Lin Wanyan, we were already over. The wedding sedan chair jolted and swayed its way to the crown prince's mansion. Qi Shenglin took my hand, preparing to lead me inside. Suddenly, the sound of urgent horse hooves thundered behind us. Somehow, Su Yuten had chased us down again. Qi Shenglin patted my hand reassuringly. Go on in first. Leave him to me. I hesitated for a split second, then stepped resolutely into the mansion. A quarter of an hour later, Qi Shenglin walked in, His clothes were slightly disheveled, but he was unharmed, after all. This was Qi Shenglin's territory. Su Yuten had no right to run amok here. In front of all the wedding guests, Qi Shenglin and I bowed to heaven and earth, sealing our marriage. Once we entered the bridal chamber, I looked at Qi Shenglin apologetically. "I'm sorry about what happened today. I had no idea he would." Qi Shenglin cut me off with a grin. "It's fine. At the end of the day, I'm the one who gets to marry you." I shot him a grateful look, but before I could react, Qi Shenglin leaned in suddenly and planted a soft kiss on my lips, a look of contentment spreading across his face. "Yao Yao, I promise you will never regret choosing me." My face flushed bright red in an instant. My heart began to race uncontrollably. Before I could recover from my shock, Qi Shenglin pulled me into his arms, and we spent the entire night lost in each other's embrace, never once pausing to rest. The next morning, I woke up cursing under my breath. I had heard rumors that Qi Shenglin was a frequent visitor to brothels, so why did he act like a lovesick young man experiencing intimacy for the first time? Insatiable and relentless, I struggled to sit up. Wincing at the soreness in my waist, Qi Shenglin was nowhere to be seen in the room. Just as I was about to go look for him, the sound of two maids chatting drifted in from outside the door. "Master Su knelt outside the mansion all night yesterday. He said he wouldn't get up until the crown princess forgave him. His wife just came and dragged him home by force. They almost got into a fight. It was quite the spectacle. Let me tell you, I thought Master Su loved his wife dearly. He stole her from our crown prince in the first place, so why is he now pining after our crown princess? You wouldn't understand. Men are all the same, they pine for what they can't have. But once they get it, it loses its appeal." The sound of their voices faded away into the distance. I stood rooted to the spot, stunned into silence for a long moment. It was not until Qi Shenglin walked in, holding a bowl of porridge, that I finally snapped out of my daze. "Yao Yao, why aren't you sleeping a little longer?" I shook my head. "I can't fall asleep." Qi Shenglin picked up a spoon, blew on it gently, then held the porridge up to my lips. "You must be hungry. This porridge is delicious, try it." My face turned red again, and I opened my mouth to take a bite. Qi Shenglin did not mention Su Yuten. And I did not ask. From the moment I had decided to let go of the past, Su Yuten had become nothing more than an insignificant stranger to me. As for Qi Shenglin, he was nothing like the rumors had painted him to be. For 3 days straight, he stayed by my side every waking moment, never leaving me alone. Ignoring the teasing glances from the maids, I pushed him away playfully, telling him to go attend to his duties, but he just grinned cheekily and snuggled up to me again. "Staying with you is the most important duty I have right now." And so, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the day we were to return to my parents' home, I had just climbed down from the carriage when I saw a figure rushing toward us from afar. As he drew near, I recognized him immediately. It was none other than Su Yuten. His cheek was bruised a sickly shade of blue, his lip was split open, and there were scratch marks on his face. He looked utterly wretched and disheveled. The moment he saw Qi Shenglin holding my hand, his eyes welled up with tears. I frowned slightly. "Master Su, do you have something to say to me?" A look of agony crossed Su Yuten's face. "Yao Yao, I was wrong about everything. It wasn't until after you married him that I finally realized how much Yanyan's actions hurt you." I nodded calmly. "It's all in the past now." Su Yuten's eyes lit up with hope, thinking I had forgiven him. "Yao Yao, I've already asked Lin Wanyan for a divorce. Can you please give me another chance? I promise I'll never make such a mistake again." Qi Shenglin's face turned green with rage at his words. He grabbed Su Yuten by the collar, his fist raised and ready to strike, but I quickly pulled him back. "Su Yuten," I said firmly, "when I said it's in the past, I meant that what happened between you and me is over. Now that we are both married to other people, there is no need to say such things and embarrass yourself." Su Yuten's eyes glistened with tears of anger as he pointed accusingly at Qi Shenglin. "But you will never be happy with him. I don't care about what happened between you two. Divorce him, and I'll marry you right away." Whether I would be happy with Qi Shenglin, I did not know, but I knew for certain that I would never be happy with Su Yuten. Why would I willingly jump into a pool of muddy water when I could clearly see what lay ahead? I shook my head, looking at him with a solemn expression. Su Yuten, we are no longer children. We must take responsibility for the choices we make. Since you married her, you should stay with her and make a life together. This is the best outcome for both of us." At my words, Qi Shenglin shot Su Yuten a satisfied glare, his voice laced with warning. "Did you hear that? If I ever catch you pestering her again, you'll regret it." With that, he put his arm around my waist and led me toward the mansion gate. Su Yuten let out a roar of bitter resentment. Unwilling to give up. Why him? We grew up together. You promised me you'd marry me. How could you break your word? I paused mid-step. It was true, I had said those words to him when I was young and naive, my heart newly awakened to love, but life was long and full of temptations. He had failed to keep his heart true to me. If that was the case, how could I be the one accused of breaking my word? I wasted no more words on him, grabbing Qi Shenglin's hand and walking straight into the mansion. But Su Yuten paid absolutely no heed to what I had said that day. Word on the street was that he and Lin Wanyan had been quarreling fiercely over the divorce ever since. A few days later, I went to a gathering with my girlfriends. Out of nowhere, Lin Wanyan burst into the room and dropped to her knees before me without a second's hesitation. "Sister, please give Brother Yuten back to me. I can't live without him, I really can't," Lin Wanyan wailed, her face streaked with tears and snot. Everyone's eyes darted toward us instinctively. I frowned. "Get up first." She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, I won't get up until you agree." I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Truly, she and Su Yuten were made for each other, even their ways of throwing tantrums were identical. I took a deep breath, explaining patiently, "Whatever happened between Su Yuten and me is long in the past. As for the problems between you two husband and wife, that's none of my business as an outsider, but he hasn't touched me in over half a month, and he wants a divorce from me for you. Sister, you already have the crown prince. Why do you still have to steal him from me?" The crowd of onlookers grew larger by the second. I had no desire to meddle in other people's affairs and was about to leave when Miss Lin, the eldest daughter of the Lin family, suddenly rushed over and grabbed Lin Wanyan by the ear. "Lin Wanyan, are you not ashamed enough already? Hurry up and get off your knees." At the sight of Lin Wanyan shrank back, cowering. "Elder sister, don't call me your elder sister. I have no sister like you," Miss Lin snarled. "Throwing a fit over a man like this, you've disgraced the entire Lin family." Lin Wanyan tried to say something more, but Miss Lin, disgusted by her shamelessness, ordered the servants to gag her and drag her out of the room by force. After that incident, I lost all desire to stay at the gathering any longer. It wasn't long before Su Yuten heard about what had happened that day. Furious, he locked Lin Wanyan up, terrified that she would run to me again and spout more nonsense. For the first time in days, I finally had some peace and quiet. Just when I thought everything was behind me, I suddenly received a message from Su Yuten. "Qi Shenglin, Yanchun Tower. Back door. Come quickly." Yanchun Tower was the largest brothel in the capital and also Qi Shenglin's favorite haunt in his wilder days. The rumors about him flashed through my mind, and my heart skipped a beat, sinking like a stone. Before I knew what I was doing, I found myself walking toward the back door. There, Su Yuten was already waiting for me beside a carriage. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up like he had finally caught Qi Shenglin red-handed. His voice trembled with excitement. "Yao Yao, I told you Qi Shenglin was no good. It hasn't even been a few days, and he's already showing his true colors. I just got word he's in Yanchun Tower right now, drinking himself drunk with a bunch of other playboys. If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see for yourself right now." A wave of reluctance washed over me. I was terrified of seeing something I shouldn't. After a moment's hesitation, I climbed into the carriage anyway. The entire ride there, my heart felt like lead. Learning that Qi Shenglin had gone to Yanchun Tower hurt 100 times more than when I'd found out Su Yuten had married Lin Wanyan. Seeing how downcast I looked, Su Yuten wisely kept his mouth shut. I followed Su Yuten through the back door, walking unimpeded all the way to a private room. As soon as we drew near, I heard Qi Shenglin's voice. My heart plummeted to the pit of my stomach, but the next second, I heard him say, "Let me make this clear, if you guys invite me to a place like this again, I won't come." Whoa, Since when did the crown prince become a henpecked husband? Someone teased. You guys have no idea, he's had a crush on Jiang Shu Yaro since they were kids. He finally managed to marry her, so of course he's treating her like a precious treasure, another voice explained. The men inside the room perked up, curiosity piqued. What's the story between him and Jiang Shu Yaro? Spill the tea. Do you guys still remember the time he got lost as a kid? Jiang Shu Yaro found him back then. She thought he was a beggar and gave him a silver ingot. After that, he climbed over her courtyard wall every single night, scared the poor girl so bad she didn't dare sleep alone for ages. And when he found out she was betrothed to that Su kid, he cried for days. My eyebrows shot up in surprise. I did remember that incident now. There had been a dark figure lurking on my wall every night back then. I'd thought it was a ghost, so terrified that I hadn't dared sleep alone for a long time. I'd never imagined that figure had been Qi Shenglin. Hey Shenglin, I remember you even filled an entire room with portraits of Jiang Shu Yaro back then, just to gaze at them and think of her. Did you ever throw those paintings away? I held my breath instinctively, listening intently. Then I heard Qi Shenglin's voice ring out, clear and sure. No, haha. So when Su Yuten crashed the wedding and stole Lin Wanyan away from him, was that actually exactly what he wanted? Shenglin never wanted to marry anyone with the surname Lin in the first place. It was his mother who forced the marriage on him. Besides, if he hadn't let his guard down on purpose, do you really think Su Yuten could have stolen his fiancé from right under his nose that easily? At those words, Su Yuten's face turned ashen. He had brought me here to catch Qi Shenglin cheating, never expecting to hear this instead. In the end, he was the only fool in this whole mess. Too humiliated to stay any longer, Su Yuten fled the scene in a hurry. In that moment, he finally realized he had lost completely and utterly. He let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. Yao Yao, do you think I'm stupid? I was the one who pushed you into his arms with my own 2 hands. And I said so many terrible things to you. You must hate me, don't you? Tears of regret streamed down his face as he spoke. I looked at him quietly, my voice calm and steady. Su Yuten, I'll admit it, once upon a time, I really did like you, so much so that I dreamed of marrying you every night. But that was once upon a time. Now I'm living a happy life. I don't want him to be upset because of you. So from now on, when we see each other, let's pretend we don't know each other, okay? Su Yuten hung his head, falling silent for a long time. Just when I thought he would never answer, he nodded slowly, his figure looking smaller and more desolate than ever. He had arrived here brimming with pride and triumph, but left with his tail between his legs, utterly dejected, watching his retreating back. I knew for certain that this time, Su Yuten and I were truly over. I did not go back to disturb Qi Shenglin. Instead, I returned to the Crown Prince's mansion and made my way to his study. Even though I had braced myself for what I might see, I still froze in shock the moment I stepped inside the room. The walls were covered from floor to ceiling with portraits of me. Judging by the faded ink, these paintings were already several years old. Every single brushstroke was filled with his love for me. A warm, fuzzy feeling spread through my chest, and my eyes couldn't help but grow moist. When Qi Shenglin returned to the mansion and saw me standing there with red, teary eyes, he paled with fright. He rushed over to me, pulling me into his arms in a panic, his voice tight with worry. Yao Yao, why are you crying? Did I do something wrong, or did someone bully you? My heart is weak, please don't scare me like this. I couldn't hold back any longer, burying my face in his chest and sobbing. Qi Shenglin, I like you so much. Qi Shenglin's entire body went rigid. It took a moment for his brain to process what he had just heard. Then, a look of ecstatic joy spread across his face. He hugged me tightly, pressing kiss after kiss to my hair and cheeks. Yao Yao, I love you, more than you could ever imagine. So much more. Later, when Qi Shenglin found out that Su Yuten had taken me to Yanchun Tower to catch him cheating, he was so furious that he almost stormed over to the Su family mansion to drag Su Yuten out and give him a good beating. He also assured me repeatedly that even though he had visited Yanchun Tower in the past, he had never laid so much as a finger on any of the women there. Afraid that I wouldn't believe him, he even tried to get down on his knees and swear an oath to heaven. I watched him with amusement. Ever since I had seen those portraits, I had understood the depth of his feelings for me, and I believed every word he said. For a fleeting moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, grateful that Qi Shenglin and I had not missed each other. Not long after that, a scandal rocked the entire capital, this time involving the Su family. Su Yuten was dead set on divorcing Lin Wanyan. Naturally, Lin Wanyan refused to agree. The two of them had a violent, screaming fight. After that, Lin Wanyan actually poisoned Su Yuten's food, intending to kill him and die alongside him in a murder-suicide. Lin Wanyan died in the end. Su Yuten was lucky enough to be rescued in time, saving his life, but the poison had seeped deep into his lungs, leaving him a permanent invalid who would have to rely on medicine for the rest of his days. When I heard the news, I couldn't help but let out a long, heartfelt sigh. But his problems were no longer any concern of mine. When I had first married Qi Shenglin, I had been prepared to live with him as nothing more than cordial strangers, putting on a show of being a happy couple for the sake of appearances. I had never dreamed that I would end up finding the greatest love of my life. Happiness was right in front of me. This time, I was determined to hold on to it tightly. And now, let's move on to our next story. He's a top 3 scholar now. How could he still remember a worn-out wife like me? I was crying my heart out. Putting on a dramatic show. So about this remarriage thing, could you please help me look for a suitable match? Auntie. The old auntie looked at me with genuine sympathy, squeezing my hand tightly and nodding her head, ready to agree, when a faint, low voice suddenly drifted over from behind me. Madam, I froze. My body went rigid as I slowly turned around. My gaze locked onto my husband, the newly crowned top 3 scholar, who was looking at me with a meaningful glint in his eyes. Jin has come to take you to the capital. After Lin Jin had achieved the prestigious rank of top 3 scholar in the imperial examinations, he had been delayed in returning home. The villagers all looked at me with pity in their eyes. They were all convinced that Lin Jin had made a name for himself and was now going to abandon me, his plain, uneducated wife from his humble beginnings, and I certainly lived up to their expectations. After shedding a few dramatic tears for show, I immediately set about busily arranging my remarriage. If it hadn't been for my late father's dying wish, Lin Jin and I would have never ended up together in the first place. Now that we were going our separate ways, good riddance. But just when the matchmaker was about to arrive at my doorstep with potential suitors, Lin Jin came back. Lin Jin, the young and handsome top 3 scholar, had become the most sought-after bachelor in the capital. Countless wealthy and powerful families were eager to snatch him up as a son-in-law right after the imperial examinations. Some offered him power and influence, others tempted him with immense wealth. But Lin Jin, thinking of his wife waiting patiently for him back in his hometown, furrowed his brows and turned them all down one by one, to ensure that his wife would have a place to stay once she arrived in the capital. He had delayed his journey home for a while to purchase and settle into a new mansion. Only then had he hurried back to his hometown. But when he finally reached his front door, the sight that greeted him was his wife, sitting there weeping her heart out, busy making arrangements to remarry. Being caught red-handed by my husband while plotting to remarry was beyond awkward. Lin Jin politely saw the matchmaker off, then turned around to face me. The hour is getting late, madam. Have you had your dinner yet? I felt like the guiltiest person alive. Even if Lin Jin were to divorce me on the spot, I would have deserved it. How dare I let a distinguished top 3 scholar, a man whose hands were meant for holding a brush and writing essays, cook for me? Overwhelmed with shame, I shoveled 2 more mouthfuls of rice into my mouth. But I had to admit it, Lin Jin was an excellent cook. The bowl of rice in front of me and the plates of food on the table were soon completely empty. Just as I was sitting there, rubbing my round, contented belly with a satisfied smile on my face, Lin Jin spoke up, his voice calm and even. Has madam finished her meal? I nodded my head. He sat up straight, his posture impeccable. Then perhaps we should discuss this matter of your remarriage. At his words, I choked on my own saliva, coughing violently. Lin Jin's heart was not untouched by the sight of his wife, eager to remarry barely days after he had left home. A strange, unfamiliar feeling of frustration and irritation slowly washed over him. He hadn't touched a single bite of the dinner he had cooked with his own hands. It had taken all his self-control to wait patiently until she had finished eating. Now, Lin Jin sat up straight, his lips pressed together in a thin line, waiting silently for her to explain herself. But instead of an explanation, he was greeted by the sound of her coughing her lungs out, her face turning bright red from the effort. Her slender, delicate body trembled violently with each cough, looking so fragile and vulnerable it made his heart ache. He thought back to the days before he ranked among the top 3 scholars in the imperial examination, when their family had been destitute. Ever since she married him, she had never lived a single day of ease. The anger simmering in Lin Jin's heart instantly deflated by half. Then he saw her gently tugging at his sleeve, gazing up at him with those timid, deer-like eyes. The strange, flustered feeling that had been gnawing at him earlier dissipated completely, like receding tide. But suddenly, she covered her face with a handkerchief. Her thin shoulders trembled violently as she sobbed. "Husband, I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. I thought you really would abandon me, just like the villagers said." Hiccup. Abandon a worn-out wife like me. Hiccup. Watching her cry so hard she could barely catch her breath, her words broken by hiccups. Lin Jin's heart clenched tightly with worry. He paused, at a loss for what to do, and patted her back awkwardly to comfort her. "Don't cry, my lady. I never meant to blame you." But instead of calming down, she cried even louder, as if she had bottled up all her grievances and had nowhere else to pour them out. But what had he done wrong? Lin Jin began to reflect on his own actions. "I felt a surge of overwhelming guilt so strong it made me tongue-tied. I sounded like an old woman on her deathbed, weak and fragile from a lingering illness, afraid that Lin Jin would fly into a rage and chase me around with a kitchen knife. I pressed my handkerchief to my face and knelt before him, confessing my sins with snot and tears streaming down my cheeks. As I cried, the tears turned genuine. I was filled with regret. I'd been too slow. Now my plan to remarry was completely ruined. Wah." Lin Jin said he didn't blame me, yet I cried even harder. Why didn't he take this chance to divorce me? We were totally incompatible. He spent his days reciting poetry and writing essays. I could barely recognize a single character. He immersed himself in the 4 books and 5 classics. I lazed on the couch flipping through picture books all day long. He loved quiet solitude. I craved liveliness and excitement. My new best friend Ahua had studied with her elder brother for a few days. She described me as calm as a maiden when still, but wild as a mad dog when on the move. It was a total insult to such an elegant name like Jiang Zijin. I remembered when Lin Jin had been preparing for the imperial examination, burying himself in his studies at home. To avoid disturbing him, I hadn't even dared to breathe too loudly, forcing myself to behave like a well-behaved lady for months on end. Lin Jin had praised me for being gentle and demure. I'd smiled sweetly on the outside, while cursing him inwardly. As soon as he left for the capital to take the exam, I'd let out a huge sigh of relief and immediately run to Ahua's house to vent my frustrations. Later, when I heard the rumors that Lin Jin had grown tired of me and refused to come back to fetch me, I'd been over the moon with joy. But my days of freedom were short-lived. He'd actually come back. I looked up at the sky in despair. This was simply unbearable, watching his wife dissolve into a puddle of tears before him. Lin Jin was consumed by remorse. It was all his fault. He'd neglected Zijin, leaving her feeling so insecure that even the slightest rumor had made her panic and rush to find a new husband. How could he ever abandon her? Before Master Jiang passed away, he had entrusted Zijin to his care. She was not just his wife, she was a responsibility he carried on his shoulders. Lin Jin's thoughts drifted back to the day Zijin first married him. The imperial examination had been fast approaching, and he'd been stretched thin writing calligraphy for money during the day, and burning the midnight oil to study at night. He'd barely had any time to accompany Zijin, even on their wedding night. He'd only managed to lift her red veil with trembling hands. After that, they'd sat awkwardly on the edge of the bed, saying nothing to each other. It was Zijin who'd broken the silence first, gently urging him to return to his study to continue his revisions. He'd nodded calmly, putting on a brave face, but before going back to his desk, he'd stood outside for a long time, letting the cold night wind cool his flushed cheeks. After that night, he'd moved into the study permanently, never once disturbing Zijine's peace. On a daily basis, Zijine had seemed as quiet and delicate as a porcelain doll, only occasionally, when a mischievous glint flickered in her deer-like eyes, had Lin Jin felt like he was finally seeing the real her, a flesh-and-blood woman with a spark of life in her. But those moments of playfulness had been few and far between, or rather, she'd made sure not to let him see them. Zijine had never been particularly affectionate toward him, so when he heard the news that she wanted to remarry, he'd pressed his lips together, not the least bit surprised, without a word. He'd left the post house in the capital, changing horses 3 times in a row, and rushed back home as fast as he could. Thankfully, he wasn't too late. The cloud of gloom hanging over Lin Jin's heart finally lifted a little. He made up his mind, from now on, he would spend more time with Zijine, making up for all the years he'd lost. With Lin Jin refusing to let me go, my dream of remarriage was dead in the water. I had no choice but to nod reluctantly when he told me we were moving to the capital. He said the emperor had bestowed a large mansion upon him. I tried to console myself with this thought, at least we could each have our own courtyard, leaving each other in peace. With that plan in mind, I happily began packing my luggage, but Lin Jin had been acting really strange lately. He kept hovering around me for no reason at all. Could it be that he was just bored? After hesitating for a moment, my heart softened, and I fetched the stack of picture books I'd been hoarding for years. Offering them to Lin Jin as a gift, Lin Jin had treated me well enough, it was only fair that I returned the favor, wasn't it? Watching her pull out the picture books from under her bed like a child showing off her most prized possessions, Lin Jin couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. He'd never been one for reading such trivial things. The only reason he'd been lingering around her was because he wanted to spend more time with her, not because he had nothing better to do. But looking into her earnest eyes, Lin Jin hesitated for a moment before reaching out to take the books from her. Oh well, she was only trying to be nice, afraid that he'd be bored at home. If she loved reading these picture books so much, then he would read them too. That way, in the future, they wouldn't end up sitting awkwardly on the bed with nothing to say to each other. He'd heard that some of these storybooks even taught lessons on how husbands and wives should get along. Filled with a thirst for knowledge, Lin Jin opened the first picture book, but after flipping through just 2 pages, he slammed it shut with a loud bang. When Lin Jin came back to me, holding the picture book in his hand, the tips of his ears were bright red as blood. I stared at him in confusion. Were these picture books really that interesting? Usually, I couldn't read the words, so I just flipped through the illustrations, and they were nothing special. His lips trembled as he spoke. His voice strained. My lady, do you have any idea what these books are actually about? I shook my head firmly, but to be honest, I was dying of curiosity, so I rolled my eyes playfully, grabbed his sleeve, and put on a shy, coquettish expression. Husband, I'm illiterate. I can't read a single word in these books. If you have some free time, could you read them aloud to me? But Lin Jin jumped back as if he'd been burned by fire. He snatched his sleeve out of my hand in a fluster, tossed the picture books back to me, and stammered, I suddenly remembered I have urgent business to attend to. I'll come back to accompany you another day. With that, he fled back to his study, slamming the door shut behind him. I glared at his retreating back, stamping my foot in frustration. Urgent business, my foot. He hadn't done a single productive thing since he came back home. It was all just an excuse. Fine, if he didn't want to read to me, then forget it. When we get to the capital, I'll take his salary and hire 10 handsome young men to read to me day and night. Lin Jin had stormed into her room full of righteous indignation, ready to confront her, but he'd ended up fleeing like a coward. He didn't dare to face her. He could only shut himself in his study, sitting at his desk and rubbing his throbbing temples. Lin Jin pulled out a travelogue from his bookshelf and spread it open on the desk, but try as he might, he couldn't focus on a single word. He sat there in a daze for the entire afternoon. That night, Lin Jin lay down on the couch in his study without even bothering to take off his clothes. As soon as he closed his eyes, his mind was flooded with images from the picture book he'd read earlier, and the memory of her pulling at his sleeve, begging him to read to her, her bright, lively eyes sparkling with mischief. The bold, explicit words from the book kept swirling around in his head. In his dazed state, Lin Jin drifted off to sleep. Dreaming that he'd turned into the poor scholar from the storybook. It was late at night, and he was burning the midnight oil, pouring over his books. Suddenly, there was a soft knock on his study door. He got up to open it, and found a pair of delicate hands resting gently on the doorframe. Standing outside was a woman with a seductive gait, looking like a fox spirit come to drain his life force. "The night is cold and dewy, young master. Could you spare me a place to stay for the night?" But then the woman looked up, and her face was identical to his wife's. Her clear, innocent deer-like eyes reflected his own image. Her eyes shimmered with affection as she parted her red lips and whispered softly, "Husband." The next morning, Lin Jin woke up with a dark scowl on his face. Getting up at the crack of dawn, I yawned loudly as I opened my window, and saw Lin Jin standing in the courtyard, dark circles under his eyes, hanging up the bedding to dry. I stared at him speechlessly. Were all scholars this obsessed with cleanliness? Was he willing to sacrifice his sleep just to do the laundry at dawn? With a loud bang, I slammed the window shut again. Lin Jin had brought back a lot of silver with him from the capital. He'd hired servants to pack our luggage. So I didn't have to lift a finger. Bored out of my mind, I just leaned back on my couch and picked up a picture book to read, when there was a knock on my door. Standing outside was none other than Lin Jin, the man who'd claimed to be swamped with urgent business. I waved him in generously, but as soon as I turned my back, I rolled my eyes at him so hard they almost got stuck. I flopped back down on the couch and continued reading my book, ignoring him completely as if he were nothing more than a wooden post. But to my annoyance, this wooden post showed up at my door bright and early every single day for the next few days. As soon as he stepped inside, he'd sit down on the stool beside my bed and stare at me in silence, without saying a single word. Did I have flowers growing on my face? Was I really that fascinating to look at? I finally reached my breaking point, under Lin Jin's bewildered gaze. I slammed the door shut behind me and ran to Ahua's house to pour out my grievances, hoping she could give me some advice. But to my disappointment, the house was empty. The entire Hua family had moved away without a word, leaving nothing but a letter for me. I didn't even bother to open the letter. I wandered back home in a daze, missing my partner in crime Ahua terribly, feeling utterly dejected and listless. But halfway there, a sudden realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. When Zijin announced that she wanted to take the initiative to leave him, Lin Jin's eyebrows twitched violently in anger. She looked at him with a knowing smile, her tone surprisingly light and relieved. "I'm foolish and unworthy of you, husband. I beg to leave your household of my own accord, giving up my position as your wife, so that you may find a virtuous new bride in the future. Of course," she added, raising an eyebrow playfully, a teasing glint in her eyes. "If you've already taken a new wife in your mansion in the capital, I'll be genuinely happy for you, and I promise I won't make a scene or stand in your way." Watching her pretend to be nonchalant, as if his feelings meant nothing to her, Lin Jin felt a sharp pain in his chest, like someone had punched him right in the heart. Yesterday afternoon, after waking up from my nap, it had suddenly all clicked into place. First, Lin Jin had lingered in the capital for days after passing the exam, refusing to come home. Then, as soon as he returned, he'd started acting all weird, hovering around me non-stop every single day. There was only one explanation: he'd already taken a new wife in his fancy new mansion in the capital, and he was too embarrassed to tell me the truth. Well, that was no problem at all. I wasn't some unreasonable shrew, after all. Besides, now that he was a top 3 scholar and an official, I would never be able to handle all the tedious troubles that came with being an official's wife. It worked out perfectly, didn't it? He had his new flames, and I wanted to remarry, a simple divorce agreement, and everyone would be happy. But to my surprise, after hearing me out, Lin Jin's expression remained impassive, not a hint of joy on his face. His voice was low and heavy. "Jin promised Uncle Jiang that he would take good care of you, madam. You need not waste your time thinking about a divorce. I will never agree to it. Your luggage is already packed. If there is nothing amiss, Jin will take you to the capital tomorrow." With that, He flicked his sleeves and walked away, not giving me the slightest chance to refuse. Lin Jin had originally thought that since Zijin did not trust him now, he would wait until they arrived in the capital, live with her in the same courtyard, and slowly get to know each other again. But who could have guessed that upon entering the capital and moving into their new mansion, Zijin smiled brightly and suggested they split the courtyard, then turned around without the slightest hesitation and closed her courtyard door firmly in his face, thwarting Lin Jin's plans completely. Living in separate courtyards was one thing, but ever since arriving in the capital, Zijin had stayed cooped up in her own courtyard, refusing even to see him. He had stood outside her courtyard gate countless times, only to be met with closed doors every single time. Lin Jin stood outside the gate, letting out a bitter laugh. His own wife, and yet she guarded herself against him so fiercely. What could he do to draw closer to her? The little maid who had been eavesdropping by the door turned around and gestured at me. I mouthed silently to her. "He's gone." The maid nodded. I quickly grabbed her hand, threw open the courtyard door, and whispered excitedly, let's go shopping in the street." As we walked, I grumbled under my breath, Lin Jin has nothing better to do all day than loiter outside my courtyard gate. It's gotten so bad that every time I go out, I feel like I'm sneaking around like a thief. This can't go on. I have to think of a way to stop this. But before I could come up with any plan, a servant sent by Lin Jin arrived at my courtyard. "What? You're saying master fell off his horse and broke his leg?" I was so shocked that the soup spoon in my hand clattered to the floor, landing in my bowl with a splash. Great. Now I had no choice but to go see him. It would be rude not to. After falling off his horse, Lin Jin had been carried back to the mansion by his good friend Fang Yang. Only you, Ziyu, could be ruthless enough to deliberately fall off your horse in front of the princess just to make a fool of yourself, Fang Yang said, looking at Lin Jin, who was having his wound dressed. With admiration in his eyes, Fang Yang had passed the imperial examinations in the same year as Lin Jin, ranking second place as the second top scholar, and had become Lin Jin's closest confidant. "You have no idea." Before going to the hunting ground, the princess looked at you with the hottest, most intense gaze, but the moment you pretended to be clumsy and fell off your horse, her expression turned listless. And she immediately asked His Majesty to arrange a marriage between her and the top scholar. Fang Yang shook his folding fan, sighing with feeling. "Thank goodness the second top scholar, am just plain looking. If the princess had taken a fancy to me, my wife would have made my life a living hell with her tantrums." Seeing Lin Jin just bow his head in silence, focused solely on changing his bandages, Fang Yang patted him on the shoulder teasingly. "Hey, Ziyu, this bandage-changing business should be left to your wife. Don't you think?" "Why?" Lin Jin asked without even lifting his eyes. "Jin can manage it perfectly well on his own. Why trouble madam with such a trivial matter?" Fang Yang clicked his tongue softly. "You just don't get it, do you? If she helps you change your bandages and sees how badly injured you are, she will naturally feel sorry for you." Lin Jin made no comment, but deep down, he had never once thought of using his injury to gain her sympathy. Besides, when he had fallen off his horse, a sharp stone had sliced a deep gash in his leg, leaving it a bloody, gruesome mess. Lin Jin had no intention of letting Zijin see such a horrifying wound. Fang Yang leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Ziyu, you need to give your wife a chance to take the initiative to care for you." "Take the initiative to care for him." Lin Jin thought of Zijin's tightly shut courtyard gate, and let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "It is my own fault. I neglected her so much while I was busy preparing for the imperial examinations. Now she runs away at the mere sight of me. How could she possibly take the initiative to care for me?" Seeing that Lin Jin was being so stubborn, Fang Yang grew anxious, his face creased with frustration. "Then you need to take the initiative to ask her. Pretend your injury is worse than it is. Play the poor victim a little. If your wife's heart softens, she might just agree to take care of you. If she comes to help you change your bandages every day, you two will naturally grow closer with all this back and forth." At the words "grow closer," Lin Jin's hand finally paused mid-motion as he applied the medicine. "But, pretend to be injured and play the victim." Lin Jin frowned slightly. If he really did such a thing, He had no idea how Zijin would react. "Master, how are you feeling? Please don't leave me alone." "Wah." I threw myself on the edge of Lin Jin's bed, weeping copiously. My voice thick with sobs. It was just, damn it, who the hell soaked my handkerchief in chili water? I specifically asked for onion juice. Onion juice. I had originally only planned to come over for a quick courtesy visit, dab a little raw onion juice on my handkerchief to irritate my eyes, squeeze out a few fake tears to show my concern, then make a run for it. But who knew that the chili water would trigger such a flood of tears, making my eyes turn bright red and puffy, looking absolutely pitiful. Much to Lin Jin's obvious surprise and genuine emotion. "Jin is fine. Madam, there is no need for you to worry," he said softly. I was just about to nod and make my escape when my eyes fell on the blood-stained linen bandage wrapped around his leg. I froze on the spot, completely dumbfounded. I stared at him in utter shock, the words tumbling out of my mouth before I could stop them. "This is fine. Master, doesn't this hurt you?" At my words, the corners of Lin Jin's mouth twitched slightly, and he let out a soft cough. "This minor pain is bearable. It's just, Jin has a small favor to ask of you. Madam, I wonder if you would be willing to help. We were living under the same roof after all. It would be rude of me to refuse to help when he was injured." I rolled up my sleeves, determined, of course. "What is it? Just say the word." The imperial physician said Jin's wound is deep, and I occasionally suffer from high fevers at night. Would Madam be willing to move into my courtyard to stay with me for a few days? Stay with him, in the same courtyard, or the same room? I was stunned into silence once again, but then I thought about how he was injured and in need of care. After hesitating for a moment, I finally nodded my head. Lin Jin had never expected that Fang Yang's idea would work so brilliantly. Not only had Zijin cried until her eyes were red and swollen, but she had even agreed to move in to stay with him. But the main courtyard was spacious apart from his own bedroom. There were plenty of side rooms. He had originally only wanted to use this as an excuse to get her to move into the main courtyard side room, never once intending to force her to share the same bedroom as him. As for asking her to take care of him, that had merely been a lie to coax her into moving in. If he really felt unwell, he would never dream of disturbing her. He would simply call the night watchman instead. But who could have guessed that upon hearing his request, his little wife would furrow her delicate brows, hesitating for a moment before speaking softly. "Then, this concubine will sleep on the couch in the outer room, so as not to disturb Master's rest. If Master feels unwell during the night, just call for me." The outer room. Lin Jin's heart skipped a beat. His bedroom was simple and modest. The outer room where the couch was placed was separated from the inner room where his bed was by nothing more than a single folding screen. That night, Zijin really did carry her bedding over and spread it out on the soft couch in the outer room. She was wearing a thin nightgown. After greeting him good night, she lay down and quickly fell asleep, to avoid disturbing her slumber with the light. Lin Jin propped himself up on his good arm and blew out the candle beside his bed. The room was plunged into complete darkness. Before long, the sound of her steady, even breathing drifted over from the outer room. Lin Jin lay on his bed. Sharing the same room with his wife, he had thought he would feel a sense of peace and contentment in his heart, but instead, he felt a familiar surge of warmth and restlessness coursing through his veins once again. His heart beat faster and faster. Thudding loudly in his chest, he silently cursed himself for being such a beast. Yet no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop his mind from growing hotter and dizzier by the second. Eventually, he drifted off into a drowsy, half-conscious state. When I woke up early the next morning, the scorching heat radiating from Lin Jin's forehead made my heart skip a beat in alarm. I scrambled out of bed as fast as I could, rushing to fetch the imperial physician. Thankfully, we managed to bring his fever down just in time, saving his life. But that burning forehead I had felt that morning had seared not only my palm, but also my conscience. I had clearly promised to take care of him, yet I had slept like a log all night long. To prevent such a tragedy from happening again, I gritted my teeth, made up my mind, and carried my bedding over to spread it directly on Lin Jin's bed. He stared at me in utter disbelief, his eyes wide with shock. I could only force myself to explain awkwardly, "If Master does not mind, This concubine will sleep beside you from now on. That way, if you feel unwell during the night, I will be able to notice it immediately." Lin Jin's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He turned his head away, avoiding my gaze. "Thank you for your concern, Madam. Jin has no objections." No objections was good enough for me. I let out a sigh of relief, then wrapped myself up tightly in my blanket. After settling in, a sudden thought occurred to me, and I added quickly, "Oh right, Master, about that. I'm a very restless sleeper at night. If I accidentally disturb or offend you in my sleep, Master can just push my wandering hands and feet away without hesitation. No need to be polite with me." Lin Jin lay with his back to me, remaining silent for a long time before finally letting out a soft hum. With that reassurance, I closed my eyes and fell asleep with peace of mind. Lin Jin had never, in his wildest dreams, imagined that Zijin would be willing to share the same bed with him just to take care of his injury. His heart was overflowing with gratitude and tenderness. For a long time, he lay awake, unable to fall asleep. He listened as her breathing gradually slowed and deepened, indicating that she had fallen into a deep sleep. Carefully, Lin Jin rolled over on his side to face her. Moonlight streamed through the window, spilling onto the edge of the bed. Lin Jin still had no trace of sleepiness. Instead, he found himself gazing at her, his eyes tracing the delicate contours of her eyebrows and eyes over and over again, as if he could never get enough of the sight. Even after Zijin had fallen completely asleep and started to toss and turn, just as she had warned him she would, Lin Jin still lay awake, watching over her silently. He watched as she kicked off her blanket with practiced ease in her sleep, and a soft, fond smile tugged at the corners of his lips. His leg injury was still not fully healed, but he was afraid she would catch a cold. Reluctantly, he propped himself up on his elbow. Leaning forward slightly, he stretched out one arm, carefully reaching around the sleeping figure beside him to grab the edge of the blanket she had kicked to the side of the bed. Just as he was about to tuck the blanket back around her gently, the person beneath him suddenly opened her eyes. Lin Jin froze, completely dumbfounded. Before he could even react, a sharp gust of wind from a palm strike, infused with a hint of anger, came hurtling toward his face. I was sound asleep when I suddenly felt someone tugging at my blanket. I pried one eye open a crack, squinting blearily in the direction of the disturbance. In the dim moonlight, I saw a dark figure leaning over me, pressing down closer and closer. In that split second, my hand reacted faster than my brain, and so, with a resounding slap, two people were left completely dumbfounded. By the time I finally snapped back to my senses, a bright red palm print was already blooming across Lin Jin's face. My eyes fell on Lin Jin's hand, which was still clutching the edge of my blanket, and it finally dawned on me he had only been trying to do me a kindness by tucking my blanket back in, but instead, I had slapped him right across the face. A wave of awkwardness and shame washed over me, making me wish I could just lie there motionless and pretend to be dead forever. But pretending to be dead would solve nothing. I had to find a way to make amends. I heard that applying a peeled, hard-boiled egg to a bruise could help reduce the swelling quickly. So I pinned Lin Jin down on the bed and spent several days in a row rubbing his face with warm eggs. At first, Lin Jin had struggled and resisted, trying to push me away, but eventually, worn down by my relentless persistence, he had no choice but to resign himself to his fate, letting me rub his face as much as I pleased. As the days went by, the two of us grew much more familiar and comfortable with each other. Later, the swelling on his face finally subsided completely, but surprisingly, the two of us no longer sat in awkward silence whenever we were together, as we had in the past. Instead, we had somehow become as close as good friends, or rather, good brothers. Especially since Lin Jin's leg injury was still not fully healed, making it difficult for him to move around. I took the initiative to run errands and fetch things for him. For instance, he hated the thought of strangers entering his study, so the task of retrieving books and official documents from his study naturally fell to me. One day, he caught sight of the peach tree outside the window sprouting new branches, a single blossom-laden twig peeking through the window. His eyes lit up instantly. Having spent so many days together, I immediately knew from the look on his face that he was either itching to compose a poem or pick up his brush to paint, so I set aside the embroidery I was working on, resigned to my fate, and headed to the study to fetch his ink, brush, paper, and inkstone for him. Lin Jin had told me exactly where he kept his usual painting supplies. Following his instructions, I found several stacks of hemp paper just as he'd said. In addition to that, tucked away in the corner of the wooden cabinet were several rolls of silk fabric. I remembered that many of the famous paintings in my late father's collection had been painted on silk. Pausing for a moment, I eventually reached out and grabbed one of the rolls at random. No point in making Lin Jin come all the way back to fetch it later if he suddenly decided he wanted to use silk instead, but who could have guessed that the silk roll hadn't been tied securely the moment my fingers touched it. The roll unraveled completely, revealing a fully colored painting hidden inside. Staring at the contents of the painting, my eyebrows shot up in sheer surprise. The peach blossom branch taking shape on the hemp paper, Lin Jin set down his brush, lifting his head. He happened to catch sight of Zijin sitting on a small wooden stool by the window, leaning against the frame, dozing lazily in the warm sunlight. His fingers paused mid-air, for a fleeting moment. He was overcome with the urge to paint her into the scene beneath the peach blossoms as well, but the soft clink of his brush against the inkstone was enough to startle the very beauty who should have been in the painting awake. Finished already, she rubbed her sleepy eyes. Rising unsteadily from the stool and walking toward his desk, Lin Jin assumed she wanted to see his newly finished painting. His knuckles tensed slightly as he subtly moved his hand to cover the small imperfections hidden in the corner of the paper, but to his surprise, Zijin merely glanced at his new painting before her gaze drifted to the clean roll of silk fabric he had discarded on the side. She asked casually, as if the thought had just crossed her mind, "Master, why don't you use silk fabric for your paintings?" This concubine remembers that many masterpieces by famous artists were painted on silk. Lin Jin let out a soft laugh, completely caught off guard that this was what had piqued her interest. Painting on silk is far more troublesome. Grinding the ink, preparing the silk with a special paste, sketching the outlines, applying the colors, it takes days, if not weeks, to complete. It's not suitable for painting on a whim. Zijin nodded, uttering a soft "oh," and asked no further questions. Instead, her eyes wandered aimlessly, looking as if her mind was a million miles away. Lin Jin couldn't help but feel puzzled. Usually, Zijin had little to no interest in painting or calligraphy. Why had she bothered to stay by his side today, watching him paint with such patience? And why had she even taken the initiative to ask him about it? Unable to make sense of her sudden interest, he pushed the thought aside and began tidying up the scattered items on his desk, having put away his ink and brush. His eyes fell on the roll of silk fabric he had set aside earlier. Lin Jin paused, a sudden realization dawning on him. He had left that silk painting in his study. I had never imagined that the silk painting hidden away in Lin Jin's study would be a portrait of me, not just any portrait. Either it was a painting of me leaning lazily against a couch, engrossed in reading a storybook, even though he hadn't written the title of the book on the cover in the painting. I recognized the distinctive color scheme immediately. It was my favorite storybook, the one I'd been reading non-stop for days. I was left utterly speechless. Why on earth would he choose to paint this? He could have painted me embroidering, or playing the qin, or even just sitting quietly. Why did he have to paint me reading a storybook of all things? Was he subtly mocking me for being lazy? There was a line of small characters written in the corner of the painting, but I couldn't read them. Dejectedly, I rolled the painting back up, put it back in its place, and fetched a new, clean roll of silk fabric to take to Lin Jin instead. While Lin Jin painted, I sat beside him, my chin resting in my hand, my mind wandering aimlessly. I was dying to ask him what the small line of writing on the painting had said, but seeing him sitting there with his head bowed, completely absorbed in his work, brush moving steadily across the paper, I couldn't bring myself to disturb him. I had to admit, even though I couldn't fully appreciate the artistic merits of Lin Jin's paintings, watching him paint was a delight for the eyes in itself. Lin Jin's hands were long and slender, his knuckles prominent, yet his grip on the brush was firm and steady. His head was tilted slightly downward as he focused on his work. Still recovering from his illness, he hadn't bothered to tie his hair up with a crown, allowing his long black tresses to fall loosely over his shoulders and chest. He looked so relaxed and unrestrained, like a reclusive scholar who had lived in the mountains for years, far removed from the chaos of the world. I stared at him, completely captivated, my mind drifting off as I let out a soft sigh. If only he really were a carefree hermit living in the mountains, instead of a rising star in the imperial court, a top-3 scholar admired by countless young ladies from noble families, watching Zijin's evasive gaze. Lin Jin guessed that she must have seen the silk painting. That painting had taken him nearly a month to complete, stealing a little time each day from his busy schedule to work on it. He had originally planned to have it mounted in an elegant frame before giving it to Zijin as a gift, but now that she had already seen it, Lin Jin decided to be completely forthright and tell her about it directly. In Jin's study, there is a portrait of you, madam. I painted it during my leisure time. If you do not mind, I would like to give it to you as a small token of my affection. Seeing Zijin's eyebrows furrow slightly, Lin Jin feared that she disliked the painting. He quickly apologized, his tone filled with remorse. Jin acted presumptuously. I painted your portrait on silk without your prior consent. If you do not like it, Jin will burn the painting at once, without hesitation. But to his surprise, Zijin's frown only deepened, her face twisting into a look of distress. It's not that I dislike it, and it's certainly not presumptuous, it's just that, her voice grew softer and softer, almost inaudible. Why did you have to paint me reading a storybook? In the painting, I'm slouching on the couch. It's so unflattering. Lin Jin had never expected this to be the reason for her displeasure. For a moment, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. It is Jin's fault. The painting is yours to do with as you please, if you would like. Jin would be happy to paint you another portrait this time, exactly as you wish. At his words, Zijin's eyes lit up like stars in the night sky. Following Lin Jin's instructions, I sat back down on the small wooden stool by the window ledge, one hand supporting my chin, the other gently brushing against the peach blossom branch peeking through the window, watching as Lin Jin rearranged his ink, brush, paper, and inkstone. Not yet ready to start painting, I rolled my eyes playfully. Then mustered up the courage to ask the question I had been dying to ask all along. Master, what did that line of writing on the previous painting say? Was it a poem you composed yourself? At my words, Lin Jin's hand paused mid-stroke as he ground the ink stick against the inkstone. The line of writing on that painting was not a poem. It wasn't. I had been so sure it was a poem Lin Jin had written to praise my beauty. Wasn't that what all literati did, write poems to extol the virtues and beauty of the women they admired? Did that mean I wasn't beautiful enough in Lin Jin's eyes to inspire a poem? I let out a soft, dejected oh, my disappointment impossible to hide. But to my surprise, Lin Jin set down the ink stick. Turning to look at me, a faint, tender smile tugged at the corners of his lips as he spoke softly. It was a blessing, a wish for you, a blessing. My spirits lifted instantly. Hope sparking in my chest once more. Could it be a wish for me to remain beautiful forever, my youth and beauty never fading? Under my eager, expectant gaze, Lin Jin opened his mouth slowly, choosing his words carefully as he repeated the line written on the painting. May my beloved wife know much joy and happiness in the days to come. May she always be safe and peaceful. May she live the rest of her years free from all sorrow and care. At his words, the smile froze on my face. A gentle breeze drifted in through the open window, carrying with it a few pink peach petals that landed softly on my clothes, but I paid them no mind, sitting there frozen in place, still holding the peach blossom branch in my hand. His words echoed over and over again in my mind, reverberating through every fiber of my being. May my beloved wife know much joy and happiness in the days to come. May she always be safe and peaceful. May she live the rest of her years free from all sorrow and care. A single petal drifted down, slipping past my collar and landing on the sensitive skin of my neck. The slight tickle made me shiver, jolting me out of my daze. If Lin Jin had only been kind to me out of a sense of duty, keeping the promise he had made to my late father, then why was he now being so good to me? so good that it made my heart race and my cheeks burn with a warmth I had never felt before. As soon as Lin Jin's leg injury had fully healed, Zijin wasted no time in moving back to her own courtyard. Whenever they happened to cross paths, she would quickly avert her gaze, refusing to meet his eyes. When she spoke to him, her usually quick and witty tongue would become clumsy and slow, stumbling over her words before she would suddenly cover her face and run away, as if fleeing from something. Lin Jin was left feeling frustrated and confused. Had he somehow scared her again? But with his leg fully recovered, the emperor had begun assigning him more and more important tasks, keeping him so busy that he had little time to dwell on his troubles with Zijin. These past few days, Lin Jin had been sent by the emperor to the outskirts of the capital to assist with the resettlement of refugees who had fled to the capital to escape the devastating effects of a natural disaster. Swamped with official duties, he had been living and working on the outskirts, not returning home for nearly half a month. During this time, he had sent 2 letters back to the mansion, but Zijin had never replied, nor had she sent anyone to inquire after his well-being. Lin Jin let out a long, helpless sigh. It seemed that Zijin's heart was truly made of stone where he was concerned. His mission on the outskirts was drawing to a close, but Lin Jin had planned to stay a few more days to ensure that everything was properly settled before returning home. But that evening, several of his colleagues, having finished their dinner and with nothing better to do, sat together chatting casually. The topic of conversation turned to the princess, who was hosting a grand banquet at the princess mansion that very night, inviting the wives of many high-ranking officials to attend. Lin Jin's heart skipped a beat, a sudden sense of unease washing over him. Sure enough, one of his colleagues turned to him, a teasing smile on his face. I heard that the princess specially sent one of her personal attendants to deliver an invitation to Mrs. Lin, insisting that she honor the banquet with her presence. Who would have thought that Mrs. Lin and the princess were such close friends? How come you never mentioned this to us, Master Lin? Watching as Lin Jin shot up from his seat without a word and strode toward the stables, his colleagues were left stunned. Master Lin, where are you off to in such a hurry? The city gates will be closing soon. Lin Jin had no time to reply. He leaped onto his horse and galloped toward the imperial city, faster than he had ever ridden before. What? The princess wants to invite me to her banquet. I stared at the ornate invitation in my hand, completely bewildered. The princess and I had never even met. Even if this was just a polite gesture, why would she go to the trouble of sending one of her personal attendants to deliver the invitation in person? The elderly nanny sent by the princess stepped forward, taking my hand in hers with a familiarity that made me feel slightly uncomfortable. The princess has been mentioning Mrs. Lin constantly. She has been eager to meet you for a long time. This was unexpected, to say the least. I forced a polite smile. Nodding my head, the princess honors me with her invitation. This humble official's wife would never dare to decline her gracious request. Only after I had repeatedly assured her that I would attend the banquet did the nanny finally leave, looking thoroughly satisfied. Although the princess's invitation seemed rather odd, I racked my brains but could not recall ever having offended her in any way. Besides, with Lin Jin so busy with his official duties, I did not want to send someone to disturb him with this trivial matter, so I decided to attend the banquet alone. At the banquet, I sat alone at my table, staring boredly at the bowls and chopsticks in front of me, my mind wandering. The other ladies and wives had all grouped together in small cliques, but they were all strangers to me, and I could think of nothing to say to them. Just as I was drooping my eyelids, feeling so bored that I was on the verge of falling asleep, someone suddenly tapped me lightly on the shoulder. I opened my eyes blearily, my vision still fuzzy with sleep, but as a figure slid into the seat beside me, my eyes suddenly focused, and I nearly jumped out of my chair in shock. Ahua let out a long, exasperated sigh, shaking her head in helpless amusement. How many times do I have to tell you? It's Ahua, not Ahua. I chatted with Ahua, no, Ahua, for a long time. Only then did I learn the truth. She had originally been from the capital, but after a bitter quarrel with her husband, she had divorced him and moved to the small town where we had met. Seeking peace and quiet to mend her broken heart, She had been unwilling to talk about this painful chapter of her life, so she had told me that she was just a newcomer who had moved to the town from another village. Ahua reached out, gently tapping me on the forehead with her finger, a playful scolding look on her face. "Didn't I write all this in the letter I left for you? How come you didn't know? Did you not even bother to open it?" I stuck out my tongue guiltily, grinning sheepishly. "You know me, I can barely read a single character. How could I possibly understand what was written in it? Why didn't you ask someone to read it to you? Isn't your husband a top 3 scholar?" I shook Ahua's arm playfully. "How could I bear to let anyone else read the letter you wrote me?" Ahua rolled her eyes. Unable to argue with my logic, she pretended to be annoyed, pinching my cheek lightly. "Smooth talker." I giggled, quickly changing the subject to avoid her teasing. "So, Ahua, do you plan to marry again someday?" Ahua shook her head, her expression calm and indifferent. "My father is the Minister of Personnel. He would never allow me to marry below my station. But in this capital city, among all the powerful and noble families, how many men don't take concubines, leaving their wives neglected? I divorced my ex-husband because he was clearly favoring his concubine over me. I couldn't stand it, so I proposed a divorce before things got even uglier." She let out a long, weary sigh. "It's such a pity that marriage, the most important event in a woman's life, is always dictated by our parents' wishes and matchmakers' words. We are forced to marry strangers blindly, and if we end up with the wrong person." Her voice dropped to a whisper as she nodded toward the princess, who was walking slowly toward us from across the garden. "Even a princess would have her heart broken." "The princess?" I gasped, clapping a hand over my mouth in shock. "How could the princess possibly?" Ahua shrugged helplessly. "The crown prince consort is not allowed to hold any real power. Tell me, how many men in this world would willingly ruin their own future just for a marriage?" Not long after the princess married the top scholar, rumors began spreading all over the capital that they were not getting along. People even said they could hear loud quarrels coming from the princess mansion at night. "But the princess is different from us ordinary folks." Ahua's eyes flickered with a hint of envy. "I heard that afterward, she started inviting all sorts of handsome young musicians to her mansion, even getting a little too close with some young ministers in the court." My mouth fell open in astonishment. Doesn't the emperor care?" Ahua rolled her eyes. "The emperor? Ever since the empress passed away, he's been spoiling the princess rotten. A few lovers are the least of his concerns." As the princess drew closer, I quickly suppressed my shock, craning my neck to get a better look. Truly, she was a born royal, a daughter of the imperial family. Every gesture and movement exuded an air of nobility and grace. Her eyebrows were delicate, her eyes bright and clear, yet they held a natural dignity unique to the imperial family. Even surrounded by so many beautiful noble ladies and wives, the princess effortlessly outshone them all, her beauty taking everyone's breath away. But I never expected that after taking her seat and exchanging a few polite smiles with the other ladies, the princess would turn her gaze toward me, offering me a warm smile. "Surely this must be Mrs. Lin." Seeing me nod awkwardly, flustered by her attention, the princess raised her wine cup in my direction from across the table. "Mrs. Lin, there's no need to be nervous. Come, let this princess toast you." Truth be told, my alcohol tolerance was mediocre at best, but I had caught a whiff of the drink in my cup earlier. It was just ordinary fruit wine. I couldn't very well refuse the princess's toast and offend her, so I closed my eyes, lifted the cup, and drank it all in one go. The princess, on the other hand, tilted her neck slightly, using her sleeve to shield her face from prying eyes. After finishing her drink, she set her cup down gracefully and dabbed her lips with a silk handkerchief. Her stunningly beautiful face, combined with her elegant and poised mannerisms, was truly mesmerizing, impossible to look away from. Once the toast was done, she chatted and laughed with the other ladies, filling the banquet hall with a lively, cheerful atmosphere. One of the wives, emboldened by the wine, teased playfully, "It's only been a few days since we last met, but the princess is looking more beautiful than ever. Just the other day, when you accompanied His Majesty on the hunt, you even made Master Lin, our beloved top 3 scholar, so dumbfounded by your beauty that he fell right off his horse." The moment the words left her mouth, The entire banquet hall fell dead silent. My expression froze instantly. The princess's smile also faded, a flash of annoyance flickering in her eyes. The wife who had spoken realized her mistake the second she saw everyone's reactions. She fell silent. Looking thoroughly embarrassed, but thanks to her careless words, the princess's gaze landed on me once again. "You flatter me, madam," the princess said, her voice soft and smooth. "Mrs. Lin herself is a rare beauty. How could Master Lin possibly be so dazzled by this princess's looks that he fell off his horse?" With that, she picked up her wine cup again, raising it toward me with a gentle smile. "Mrs. Lin, please don't misunderstand me. Let this princess toast you once more." If I hadn't heard what Ahua had told me earlier, I truly wouldn't have thought anything of it. But now, I stared at the princess, radiant, dazzling, smiling so sweetly, and felt like my chest was stuffed with cotton, making it hard to breathe. I had no choice but to grit my teeth and keep drinking, cup after cup. When Lin Jin came home, I would confront him, no holding back. If he really had, then I would demand a divorce, remarry, and show him no mercy whatsoever. By the time the banquet was drawing to a close, I was already half drunk. It was Ahua who tugged at my sleeve, reminding me not to drink any more. Fruit wine from the palace always had a delayed kick that hit hard later. Reluctantly, I put down my cup, stumbling slightly as I stood up to leave. But just as I was about to step out of the hall, I was stopped by one of the princess's personal maids. "Mrs. Lin, please wait. The princess would like a few words with you." What words? My tongue was already thick with alcohol, my speech slurred and clumsy. The princess, who had been waiting for me in the corridor, frowned when she saw how drunk I was. She waved a hand at the maid, signaling her to let me go for now. The maid bowed silently and stepped back, with no one stopping me. I took 2 more wobbly steps toward the main gate of the princess mansion, but my legs felt weak and unsteady, my vision going black. The next thing I knew, I collapsed to the ground. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in the middle of a bustling, crowded street. Someone was carrying me on their back, walking carefully through the throng of people. The faint scent of peppermint emanating from them was so familiar, so comforting, that it made my heart feel at ease. I half opened my eyes, resting my head on their back. There was something important I needed to do. I was sure of it, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember what it was. My head throbbed dully. Fuzzy from the fruit wine, the only thing I was certain of was that the person carrying me was my husband, so I gave up trying to think, wrapping my arms lazily around his neck. I was so comfortable that I nearly drifted off to sleep right there on his back. That was, until I spotted a candied hawthorn stall not far ahead. The sight jolted me awake a little, bringing back a flood of memories. When my father was young, he had traveled all over the country for his business, visiting countless places. Once, when he came back from the capital, I went to the ferry terminal to meet him. He picked me up and carried me on his back, smiling down at me. "The capital is such a lively, exciting place, my little girl. This time, father brought you so many nice things. When you grow up, will you let father take you to the capital to play?" I was sitting on his back, munching happily on a stick of candied hawthorns. I nodded eagerly, my mouth full. Yes, yes. But father must keep his promise, no lying. I raised my tiny fist, playfully pounding his chest. "Bad father, you said you'd take me with you this time too, but you lied again." My father let out an exaggerated ouch, grabbing my little hand in his. All right. I promise I'll definitely take you to the capital when you're older. I'll buy you all the candied hawthorns you want too. In the capital, they have all sorts of flavors. Some have red bean paste inside, others have melon seeds." I listened to my father's words, swallowing hard, my mouth watering at the thought. I glanced down at the plain, ordinary candied hawthorns in my hand, the kind with just red berries coated in sugar, and suddenly looked at them with disdain. My father went on, animatedly telling me all about the fascinating things in the capital. Usually, when my father carried me on his back, I was never still for a second, either pulling his hair or tugging at his beard, but that day, I was unusually quiet, lying quietly on his back and listening intently to every word. Slowly, a faint, vague longing for the prosperous, bustling capital he described began to take root in my heart. I found myself looking forward to growing up quickly, so I could go to the capital with father. Unfortunately, my father broke his promise, in the end. The person who brought me to the capital, who bought me candied hawthorns, was Lin Jin. Thinking about the candied hawthorns my father had owed me all those years, a bitter taste filled my mouth. I patted the person carrying me on the shoulder, my voice unconsciously taking on a soft, coquettish tone. I want candied hawthorns. The person carrying me paused for a moment, then turned and headed toward the hawthorn stall. A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Soon enough, I was holding a stick of candied hawthorns I had never tasted before, one covered in all sorts of nuts. I couldn't wait to take a bite, only to nearly break my tooth. The candied hawthorns with nuts were dry and hard, nothing like I had imagined. I didn't like them at all. Father had lied to me again. But he had also taught me since I was little that I should never waste food, so I used my sleeve to roughly wipe the moisture from my cheeks. Then forced myself to finish the rest of the candied hawthorns, my lips pursed in disappointment. By the time we reached home, Lin Jin carefully lifted me off his back and laid me down on the bed. That was when I suddenly remembered the important thing I had forgotten earlier. Thankfully, Zijin was just drunk. Lin Jin let out a sigh of relief, gently lifting her onto the bed and removing her shoes and socks for her. He noticed that she was still clutching the empty stick of candied hawthorns in her hand. He carefully tried to pull it out of her grasp, but the small movement was enough to wake her up. Zijin blinked her eyes open, still hazy with sleep. Her lips immediately turned downward, and she burst into tears. It's not good. These candied hawthorns are terrible. They're so sour, they make my teeth hurt. Lin Jin knew she was still too drunk to reason with, so he simply humored her. All right. Then we won't buy them again next time. But to his surprise, Zijin was still not satisfied, her voice thick with tears and anger. It's not just the candied hawthorns that are sour. Tell me, did you fall off your horse because of the princess? The sudden shift in topic caught Lin Jin off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless. What? Zijin reached out and grabbed his ear, twisting it hard, her face flushed with anger. I said, did you stare at the princess's beauty until you were so dumbfounded that you fell off your horse? At her words, Lin Jin couldn't help but laugh, equal parts amused and exasperated. How could that be? Jin never even raised his head to look directly at the princess's face. He had fallen off his horse precisely to avoid the princess's unwanted attention. How ironic that he was now being accused of the exact opposite. Zijin crossed her arms stubbornly, refusing to believe him. Lin Jin winced, his ear still in her grip. Darling wife, could you please be a little gentler? Let Jin explain everything to you slowly. When Zijin showed no sign of loosening her grip, Lin Jin sighed. Realizing that arguing with a drunk person was a futile endeavor, he thought for a moment, deciding to distract her by changing the subject again. So he switched gears abruptly, his voice softening. Jin sent you 2 letters while I was away. Why didn't you write back? At his question, Zijin's eyes flew open wide, her expression suddenly turning guilty. She avoided his gaze, finally letting go of his ear. I can't read. Then, her eyes suddenly lit up with a mischievous glint. She threw her arms around his arm, shaking it gently, her tone turning sweet and coquettish. Besides, the letters you wrote me, how could I bear to let anyone else read them? Look, she pointed at the small wooden box on the table with her red-painted fingernail. I've kept them all safely in this box. The letters he had sent her, she had cherished them, keeping them all carefully stored away. Lin Jin was stunned for a moment, staring blankly at the wooden box on the table. A faint, warm sweetness began to bloom in his chest. But before he could savor the feeling, Zijin added, counting on her fingers, this box doesn't just have the letters you sent me. It also has the letter A who left me before she moved away. Oh right. And it has some little trinkets father sent me when he was traveling for business all those years ago. Lin Jin's expression froze instantly. The bitter taste of disappointment washed over him, drowning out the faint sweetness in his chest before it could even fully take root. His face darkened. He tucked her roughly under the covers, then stood up, clearly intending to leave. But before he could take a single step, a pair of soft, warm arms wrapped themselves tightly around his waist from behind. Husband, it was such a rare, sweet plea for him to stay. Lin Jin squeezed his eyes shut, a mix of embarrassment and annoyance flooding his chest. What a little liar. She was so good at deceiving him. Every time he was on the verge of giving up hope, she would show him a little more kindness, leaving him utterly captivated and unable to let go. Yet her heart had never once belonged to him. Lin Jin pressed his lips into a thin line, making up his mind to storm off without a word. But then, a small head nuzzled against his back, rubbing gently. Husband, don't go. He wanted to steal his heart and yank her arms away from his waist, but the fabric of his robe against his back was slowly growing damp with tears. Lin Jin froze. The moment he realized what was happening, he panicked, instantly turning around to pull her into his arms, but Zijin stubbornly clung to his waist, refusing to let him turn around, her face buried in his back as she sobbed uncontrollably. Wara, you have no idea. Husband, how many people are pining for you, my top 3 scholar. Every time I go shopping in the street, I hear women talking about how they wish they could marry my husband, but the worst part is, her sobs grew louder, her small fists pounding lightly against his back. The worst part is that you're so good to me, you've made me fall in love with you. Though her voice grew softer and softer, fading to a whisper by the end, Lin Jin caught every single word clearly. A jumble of emotions swirled in his chest, sweetness and bitterness tangled together, half and half. Joy bloomed at the words fall in love with you, yet his heart ached fiercely at the raw insecurity in her voice. His voice hoarse with emotion, he whispered, my wife. Jin swore an oath, in this lifetime. You will be my only one. Zijin let out a soft, disbelieving snort. Oaths are the least reliable thing in the world. Helpless, Lin Jin relented, taking her hand in his tone soft and coaxing. Then tell me, my love, what must Jin do to make you believe me? Zijin lifted her eyes to meet his, her voice thick with hurt and grievance. Is there anything going on between you and the princess? At this abrupt, confused question, Lin Jin finally understood. He guessed that her drunken confession of love tonight must have been triggered by those ridiculous rumors. If it weren't for those rumors, who knew how long it would have taken for them to finally bare their hearts to each other? But now that he had reaped the unexpected benefit from those rumors, he owed her a clear, honest explanation. He opened his mouth to speak only to find that the eloquence that had served him so well during the Imperial Palace examination had completely deserted him. All he could manage to say, over and over again, were the same few clumsy words. There really isn't anything, please believe me, my wife. But judging by the skeptical look on Zijin's face, it was clear she was far from convinced. Lin Jin fell silent for a moment. He was about to swear a deadly oath, then he remembered her words, that she didn't believe in oaths. For a moment, he couldn't think of any better way to prove his innocence. He could only furrow his brows, racking his brain for a solution. Just as he was caught in this dilemma, a pair of slender, soft hands reached up to smooth the furrow between his brows, erasing the deep crease there. I will ask you only one more question, she said, her voice gentle but her eyes firm and resolute. Does my husband like me? Yes. Lin Jin nodded slightly, yet his ears had already turned bright red. But this brief, somewhat perfunctory answer was clearly not enough to satisfy Zijin. Watching the light fade from her eyes, Lin Jin's breath hitched in his throat. He had always been a man of action, not words, putting his love into plain, straightforward words was incredibly difficult for him. But he was even more afraid that if he continued to be so reserved, what awaited him in the end would truly be her leaving to marry another. So he clenched his sleeves imperceptibly, hiding the turmoil in his heart. His voice as steady as he could make it. Jin loves Zijin with all his heart. Having finally forced the words out, Lin Jin let out a long, relieved breath. He had thought this would ease her worries, but to his surprise, her eyes instantly filled with tears, her voice trembling with grievance. If that's true, then why, on our wedding night, did you turn around and go to the study? Why wouldn't you touch me? It had clearly been her who had urged him to go red, pretending to be so virtuous and considerate. How had this somehow become his fault now? Lin Jin was left speechless, unable to defend himself. But as he looked at her soft, red lips, slightly pouted in anger, his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He took the initiative to admit his mistake. It was Jin's fault. "My wife, will you give me a chance to make amends?" Zijin said nothing. She simply closed her eyes slowly, leaning in toward him. Lin Jin had never imagined that Zijin, who looked so delicate and gentle, could be so bold and unrestrained. She grabbed him and scratched him, her touch fiery and eager, lost in the throes of passion. He still had to force himself to stay slightly alert, carefully shielding his face. He didn't want to show up at court the next day with scratch marks on his face, becoming the laughingstock of his colleagues. Thankfully, Zijin's touches were not too rough. He knew she couldn't bear to hurt him. Thinking of this, Lin Jin finally couldn't hold back the smile tugging at his lips. He quickly picked up his official tablet, using it to cover his mouth, hiding the soft smile there. Lin Jin had to wake up early for court. Sleeping in the same bed, he was afraid he would disturb her. I blinked awake sleepily, my eyes cracking open just a sliver. There, standing beside the bed, was my husband, dressed in his bright red official robe, looking so imposing and handsome it took my breath away. I opened my eyes fully, shamelessly admiring his good looks. Lin Jin finished tying his belt, then turned around. Seeing me awake, he called out to me softly, his voice low and husky with sleep. "My wife." He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair away from my face. "It's still early. Go back to sleep for a while longer." I nodded obediently, closing my eyes again. Sleepiness washed over me, and I drifted off once more. When I opened my eyes again, the sky was already bright with morning light. I stretched lazily, feeling completely refreshed. Then my maid came to tell me that a hua had already been waiting in the guest hall for a long time, having drunk several cups of tea. I quickly changed my clothes and went to meet her, but the moment she saw me, she covered her mouth with her handkerchief, giggling uncontrollably. "I heard that Master Lin carried you back to the mansion on his back last night." "Did he?" I paused mid-step as I was about to sit down. To be honest, I couldn't remember many of the details from last night. The only thing I recalled vividly was pouncing on Lin Jin and kissing him senseless. Ahua sighed, looking at me with obvious envy. "You and Master Lin have such a wonderful relationship. If only it could stay this way forever." Her voice trailed off abruptly, afraid of saying something that might jinx my happiness, but I instantly understood the unspoken words behind her sentence. If Lin Jin could always treat me this way, no concubines, no other women, that would be the greatest blessing of all. But the mere requirement of no concubines would be enough to weed out most men, let alone expecting them never to change their hearts. The imperial capital was full of temptations: power, wealth, status. One wrong step, and you could fall into the abyss, losing yourself completely. But I was willing to believe in the love between Lin Jin and me at this moment. Even if something were to happen in the future to change things, I could still smile and say, "We once had a love that was true." But I never expected that the test would come so soon. My carriage was stopped on the road, leaving me with no choice but to turn around and head to the princess mansion. Upon arriving, the princess greeted me with great enthusiasm. This princess noticed that Mrs. Lin drank quite a lot last night. "Did you wake up with a headache?" This princess has imperial physicians in the mansion, granted to me by my father, the emperor. "If you are feeling unwell, this princess will send for one to come take your pulse." I politely declined the princess's kind offer, but I couldn't help feeling suspicious. If Lin Jin was telling the truth and there was nothing going on between him and the princess, then why was she suddenly being so overly kind and attentive to me, the wife of a mere court official? Could it be that she wanted something from me? Sure enough, after taking a calm sip of tea, the princess waved away all the waiting maids and servants, speaking to me in a slow, deliberate tone. "Mrs. Lin may not know this, but last night, when you were drunk, you almost fell to the ground. Master Lin saw this and immediately assumed that this princess had done something to you." The look on his face, he was so furious, his eyes filled with such intense anger. TSK, the way he glared at this princess, it was as if he wanted to devour me whole. "Thankfully, you were unharmed. But once he found you, Master Lin was worried that riding on horseback with him would make you cold. He insisted on carrying you back to the mansion on his back, no matter what." As she spoke, the princess cast a meaningful glance in my direction. "Mrs. Lin is truly blessed. Master Lin dotes on you so wholeheartedly." Her eyes were filled with sorrow and longing. If only my husband would treat me with even a tenth of that affection. For a moment, I thought the princess was merely wallowing in self-pity. I struggled to come up with some awkward words of comfort. "Princess, there is no need for you to be sad. You are a daughter of the imperial family, a golden branch and jade leaf. You are beautiful and dignified. I'm sure your husband will soon come to appreciate your many wonderful qualities." At my words, the princess let out a long, weary sigh. "What does it matter if I am a princess? I still cannot find a man who cares for me as deeply as Master Lin cares for you." But a man who cares for me deeply, the smile froze on my face, was the princess. The princess reached out, taking my hand in hers in a gesture of false intimacy, pouring out her troubles to me. "Mrs. Lin has no idea how many times this princess has gone out of her way to intercept Master Lin in the palace, just wanting to invite him to a tea house for a chat, but every time, he doesn't even spare me a glance, he just flicks his sleeves and walks away. I had no other choice but to come to you, Mrs. Lin. I had a bad feeling about this, my intuition screaming that something was wrong." "What exactly do you mean, princess?" The princess patted my hand, giving me a calm, composed smile. "Mrs. Lin knows very well that this princess has always been the emperor's most beloved daughter. Go back and talk to Master Lin for me. If he is willing to come to this princess's mansion more often, to visit, then this princess will naturally put in a good word for him with my father, the emperor." Though I was not the sharpest tool in the shed, I could guess the hidden meaning behind the princess's word visit. I shot to my feet, barely able to maintain a polite expression on my face. "Princess, you must be joking. That would be completely against all etiquette and propriety." The princess looked at me with a subtle, condescending look of disdain. She pretended to be annoyed, pouting slightly. "Why must you be so rigid, Mrs. Lin? I am of noble birth, and I have the emperor's favor. Even if I have a few lovers, not even my own husband would dare to say a single word against it. Besides, Master Lin is still young. He achieved the rank of top 3 scholar at such a tender age. His future in the officialdom is limitless. In time, he will undoubtedly marry a young lady from a powerful noble family to strengthen his position. Having multiple wives and concubines around him is inevitable." Then, the princess looked at me with what she clearly thought was a sincere expression. This princess and Master Lin would be no more than a passing affair, a brief due relationship, and it would be beneficial to Master Lin's official career. There is really no need for you to be upset about this, Mrs. Lin. In this princess's humble opinion, the people you truly need to be wary of are those future concubines of his ladies from families far more powerful than yours. She looked at me with an air of arrogant superiority. "If Mrs. Lin is willing to help this princess arrange a meeting with Master Lin today, then in the future, should you ever find yourself in trouble, this princess will not stand idly by and do nothing. Arrange a meeting, help my own husband meet another woman in secret." It was absolutely absurd. My husband has always been a man who makes up his own mind. This humble official's wife has no influence over his decisions. I struggled to contain my anger, yanking my hand out of the princess's grasp without hesitation. "I'm sorry, princess, but I cannot do what you ask of me." Rejected so bluntly, the princess's expression turned icy cold. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes, a smile that didn't fool anyone. "Very well then. This matter does not really require Mrs. Lin's involvement anyway. It was this princess who was being foolish. But, you should think carefully about this, Mrs. Lin," the princess said, raising an eyebrow at me, her tone dripping with veiled threat. "By refusing this princess today, you are letting a powerful ally slip through your fingers for no reason at all." At her words, my anger flared up, burning hot in my chest. There is no need for the princess to trouble herself with my affairs. With that, I turned on my heel and walked out of the princess mansion without a single backward glance. Returning home, I was just about to dismiss the servants so I could curse loudly in my room to vent my anger. But the moment I stepped inside, I saw Lin Jin kneeling at the desk, lost in thought. I froze in surprise. "Husband, why are you home so early today?" Lin Jin cleared his throat softly, his eyes darting away awkwardly. There wasn't much work today. Jin wanted to come back early to accompany you, my wife. I let out a flat "oh." That was truly rare. Usually, the emperor kept Lin Jin so busy it was as if he wanted to split him in two to get all the work done. How could he have let him off the hook so easily today? But the princess's words were weighing so heavily on my mind that I had no energy to think about anything else, and I didn't notice Lin Jin's unusual behavior at the time, not until the next morning. Normally, by the time I woke up, Lin Jin would have already left for the morning court session, but this morning, when I opened my eyes, I found him still lying beside me. I sat up in shock. Today isn't a day off. Why didn't you go to court, husband? Lin Jin fell silent, avoiding my gaze. His Majesty specially granted me a few days of leave to rest at home. Recalling the princess's words from yesterday, I grabbed Lin Jin's hand tightly. Has something troubled you, husband? But Lin Jin shook his head. You worry too much, my love. By the way, the two portraits I painted for you earlier, I never got around to framing them properly. Would you like me to finish them for you today? Even though Lin Jin reassured me that everything was fine, an uneasy feeling lingered in my heart. I stayed by his side the entire day, not daring to leave the mansion for even a moment, and sure enough, that sense of foreboding turned out to be well-founded. We hadn't even finished our lunch when the mansion was surrounded by imperial guards. Lin Jin put down his chopsticks calmly. Jin will be right back, my wife. Make sure you finish your meal. There's no need to worry about me. As for those two portraits, I've had them framed now. They're in the wooden cabinet in my study. You can go take a look when you have time. Listening to his calm, composed tone, a terrible premonition washed over me. I grabbed the sleeve of his robe. Tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. Husband, I'll wait for you at home. No matter what happens, you must come back safely. He smiled gently at me, reaching out to ruffle my hair, his voice soft and reassuring. I will. With that, he turned around and walked away without looking back. There was no trace of fear on his face, making me think he really would be able to handle this easily. That liar. After Lin Jin was taken away by the guards, the soldiers surrounding the mansion did not withdraw. My heart had gone with Lin Jin the moment he left. Trapped inside the mansion, unable to go out for help, I could only sit blankly at the desk, my mind empty. But I had forgotten, just because I couldn't go out didn't mean no one could come in. Watching the princess take a seat at the head of the table as if she owned the place, I was convinced she was the one who had set this all up, and dark thoughts began to stir in my heart. The princess seemed to read my mind. She smiled calmly and confidently. If this princess dares to come here, I naturally have nothing to fear. You should think carefully, Mrs. Lin. Right now, Master Lin can still be saved, but if you do something foolish to offend me, then Master Lin will truly never get out of this mess. Never get out. I shot to my feet, my voice trembling with anger. What exactly do you mean by that, princess? The princess took a slow, deliberate sip of tea, then frowned in distaste. My father has always loathed corrupt officials. Master Lin embezzled the silver allocated for resettling the refugees. Now, he is naturally in the imperial prison, awaiting trial. That's impossible. Lin Jin would never embezzle public funds. I said it with absolute certainty. The princess let out a cold, mocking laugh. Whether Master Lin is guilty or not isn't up to you to decide, Mrs. Lin. It's up to my father, the emperor, to judge. Then she raised an eyebrow at me, her tone dripping with playful malice. But if you're willing to listen to me, this princess wouldn't mind putting in a good word for Master Lin with my father. Who knows, I might even be able to get him released and back home tonight. At her words, I suddenly calmed down, my mind clearing. An innocent man fears no false accusations. Other than this mansion, a gift from His Majesty, there is nothing of value in the Lin mansion. No matter how far your reach extends, princess, you cannot meddle in the affairs of the court. This is surely a misunderstanding. I believe His Majesty will soon clear my husband's name. The princess shook her head regretfully. What a pity. You won't take the bait. That means one less source of amusement for me. She changed her tone abruptly, her voice turning cold and threatening. But there are countless cruel methods in the imperial prison. Only this princess can protect Master Lin from the worst of it. You can rest assured, even if you refuse to cooperate with me, I would never bear to see Master Lin hurt. But when he finally walks out of that prison, who he will have in his heart then? Well, that's something I can't guarantee." With that, the princess stood up and walked away with a flick of her sleeve, leaving me standing there, my body cold to the bone. Lin Jin knew full well the old saying, "When the water is too clear, there are no fish," but he would never stoop to joining the corrupt officials in their dirty deeds. However, this refusal to compromise, to keep his hands clean, was seen as a threat by some. It meant they couldn't drag him down into the mud, couldn't force him to cover up their shady dealings. So when he was framed this time, Lin Jin didn't feel the least bit surprised, though he had left the outskirts of the capital in such a hurry that day, giving those people the perfect opportunity to fabricate charges against him. He had already thought of a way to prove his innocence to the emperor, but a few days in the imperial prison were unavoidable. Those men knew he was innocent, and that made this the perfect chance to torture him into confessing to the false charges. Lin Jin swallowed the metallic taste of blood in his throat, gripping the wall for support. He forced himself to sit up, his hands trembling. He pulled out a folded sheet of paper hidden inside the sleeve of his undergarment. The paper was neatly folded, crisp and clean. Careful not to let a single drop of blood stain the paper, Lin Jin slowly unfolded it. Painted on the paper was a woman, her smile bright and charming, her eyes sparkling with life and joy. He reached out, his fingers tracing the face that had haunted his thoughts day and night, keeping him awake countless nights. A faint, tender smile tugged at his lips. In truth, this painting had been a secret confession of his feelings. The woman in the painting was gazing out the window at the peach blossoms, a soft smile on her lips, but there was a hint of quiet longing in her eyes, as if she were missing a lover far away. At the time he painted it, he had not yet received Zijin's response to his feelings. He could only hide his hopes and desires within the brushstrokes of the painting. But now, trapped in the imperial prison, he suddenly felt a surge of regret. He was afraid that Zijin really was worrying herself sick over him. He let out a soft sigh. If only he could have held on for just a few more days. Just then, the cell door creaked open. The visitor was escorted into the cell by the guards, who bowed respectfully. When she saw Lin Jin covered in blood, her face twisted with rage. Didn't this princess give explicit orders not to lay a finger on Master Lin? You useless idiots, if your ears don't work properly, I'll have them all cut off. The guards trembled like leaves in a storm, falling to their knees with a thud, their faces filled with fear and helplessness. "Please spare us, Your Highness. We dare not disobey the orders of the high officials." The princess let out a cold snort, turning to give an order to her maid. Then she turned back to Lin Jin, deliberately softening her voice, her tone laced with false concern. "Don't worry, Master Lin, I've already sent for the imperial physician." Lin Jin lowered his eyes, his voice flat and unyielding. "There's no need, please leave, princess. Why are you being so stubborn, Master Lin?" Following his gaze, the princess spotted the portrait in his hand. She sighed, her voice filled with genuine regret. "The water from afar cannot quench the thirst of the nearby man. Why are you torturing yourself like this?" The princess stepped closer, her eyes lingering on Lin Jin's face, admiring his features. "But it doesn't matter, even if your heart isn't with me, Master Lin, just for this face of yours, I'm willing to do anything." She continued to coax him, her voice honeyed and persuasive. "I may not be able to interfere in the affairs of the court, but I can make your stay in this prison comfortable. I can keep you safe from those men who want to hurt you. I can do all of that for you." Lin Jin remained unmoved, summoning all his strength. He pushed himself to his feet, issuing a clear dismissal. "Please leave, princess. I believe His Majesty will soon restore my innocence and grant me justice. You truly are as stubborn as a block of wood." With a final cold snort, the princess flicked her sleeve and stormed out of the cell. The cell door slammed shut behind her, the lock clicking into place with a loud clank. Only then did Lin Jin lower his head, covering his mouth with his fist as he erupted into a fit of violent coughing. His coughs grew louder and more intense, racking his body until he could no longer stand upright. Lin Jin had been imprisoned for 2 days, I paced back and forth in the mansion, frantic with worry, yet I couldn't step outside the gate for even a moment. Ahua managed to bribe the guards surrounding the mansion. I immediately ordered my maid to put on my finest silk robes, pretending to be me to distract the guards. As for myself, I dressed up as a maid who went out every day to buy vegetables and groceries, determined to leave the mansion and do whatever it took to save my husband. I spent the silver from my dowry like water, but still, I couldn't find a single person willing to speak up for my husband. Desperate, I took all the remaining silver and sent it to the imperial prison, hoping to get even a sliver of news about Lin Jin, but the person I sent came back with nothing but a blood-stained robe. On the collar of the robe was an orchid I had personally embroidered for Lin Jin with my own hands. The world went black before my eyes, and I fainted to the ground. I felt like I was trapped in a long, endless dream. The dream began with the first time Lin Jin and I met, and it played on until the day he had turned and walked away from the mansion so resolutely. In the dream, I saw Lin Jin enduring the torture in the prison, his teeth clenched tightly in pain, his body was covered in blood. But his eyes remained clear and bright, unyielding to the suffering. When he saw me standing beside him, he didn't shout for help. Instead, he let out a soft sigh, his voice weak but filled with love. "Zijin, if I don't make it through this, don't waste your life waiting for me. The Lin mansion is poor. If you meet a good man, I threw myself at him, covering his mouth with my hand, tears streaming down my face. "No, I won't." My face soaked with tears, I hugged him tightly. My voice filled with unshakable resolve. "I'll wait for you to come home, husband. If you don't come back, I'll wait for you forever." When I woke up, my pillow was completely soaked with tears. I clenched my fists tightly, my heart filled with hatred for my own powerlessness. But I couldn't help but think, if he really didn't make it through this, what would I do? What would I do then? Lin Jin thought that the heavens must have been watching over him after all. Just as the torture was making his mind grow fuzzy, his senses dulled to the point where he could no longer tell day from night, he finally heard the sound of the imperial edict being read. The guards who had once been so brutal to him now bowed respectfully, offering him clean robes and smiling obsequiously as they carried him to meet the emperor. On the outside, he looked as neat and dignified as ever, but beneath the robes, his body was a mass of bruises and wounds, bleeding profusely. But he could never speak of these injuries to the emperor. To do so would be to imply that the emperor had made a mistake in ordering his imprisonment, a grave offense. So Lin Jin had to find another way to fight for what he wanted. When the emperor took his hand, his voice filled with genuine regret and sympathy. "My loyal minister Lin, you have suffered greatly. My heart aches for you." Lin Jin lowered his eyes, pretending to be humble and obedient, but in truth, he was waiting for the emperor's next words, and sure enough, they came. "If there is any wish you have, my minister Lin, I will do everything in my power to grant it to you." Finally, he had gotten what he wanted. A faint, content smile spread across Lin Jin's face. He knelt down and kowtowed deeply to the emperor. "Your Majesty, I have no other wishes. I only ask to retire from official life, to return to the countryside, to live a simple, peaceful life with my wife, honoring and loving each other until the end of our days." He had already made up his mind. If His Majesty granted his request to retire, he would keep himself untainted by the court's corruption, take Zijin far away from the imperial capital, and never return. If the emperor refused, he would have no choice but to continue fighting against those corrupt officials. He didn't seek fame as a loyal minister remembered throughout history. He only wanted to live up to the teachings of his late mentor. When the emperor clung to him tearfully, begging him to stay, even promising to rein in the princess's unruly behavior from now on, Lin Jin knew that his dream of living a quiet, idle life with Zijin was shattered. So be it, then he would strive to live a long life, serve until he was old and grey, then retire to return to his hometown with her. From that day on, their hands would be clasped tightly, never to be separated again. Epilogue. When Lin Jin was released from prison, he did not go straight home to his wife. Instead, he sent for his close friend Fang Yang, wanting to express his sincere gratitude. "I owe you a great debt of gratitude, Brother Fang. If it weren't for you working tirelessly outside the prison to gather evidence and advocate for me, I fear my fate would have been sealed. There's no need for such formalities, Ziyu. Fang Yang waved a hand dismissively, leaning against the carriage door. Then he hesitated, his tone laced with confusion. But why aren't you going home first? From what I've heard, your wife has been driven to the brink of madness these past few days, worrying herself sick over you. Lin Jin had originally planned to wait until his wounds had healed a little before returning home, sparing Zijin the pain and heartache of seeing him in such a battered state. But hearing Fang Yang's words, he couldn't help but hesitate. Just as he was torn between his two desires, a voice suddenly called out his name. Sharp with anger and worry, Lin Jin. The next moment, the person pushed past Fang Yang, who was blocking the carriage door, and threw back the curtain, her eyes glistening with tears as she accused him. You're free now, so why won't you come home? Lin Jin fell silent, at a loss for words. She gritted her teeth, her voice trembling with hurt. Is it because you're dissatisfied with me as your wife? Do you intend to take a concubine outside instead? Lin Jin shook his head frantically, opening his mouth to deny it, but she cut him off abruptly, her voice surprisingly calm. I'll allow it. Lin Jin stared at her in stunned disbelief. She went on, speaking as if to herself, her tone hollow. You can take a concubine on one condition. She must be a noble lady from a powerful family, with an illustrious background. If those ladies refuse to be concubines, then a second wife with equal status is fine too. Lin Jin's brows furrowed deeply, about to interject and stop her from saying such nonsense, but she trailed off, her eyes vacant as she muttered, in short, you must marry someone with power and influence. Don't choose someone like me, helpless, useless, unable to do anything to help you. Watching her lean weakly against the carriage door, her figure exuding an air of dejection and despair, Lin Jin sensed that something was terribly wrong. My wife, why would you say such things? She turned her face away, refusing to meet his gaze, her voice choked with sobs. I was so afraid that you would be hurt again, while I could only sit at home, powerless to do anything to save you. Looking at her pale lips and haggard face, Lin Jin knew that she must have suffered countless sleepless nights, tormented by worry these past few days. He sighed softly, pulling her into his arms gently. It won't happen again, I swear to you. From now on, I will be cautious in both my words and deeds. I will never make you worry about me again. The woman in his arms trembled, her body racked with quiet sobs. I believe you. You must keep your promise. No more lies. Lin Jin was about to nod when he accidentally pulled at his wounds. Letting out a low grunt of pain, Zijin looked up in alarm, her face draining of all color. Husband, what's wrong? Are you hurt? She ignored his protests, dropping the carriage curtain and tearing open his robe without hesitation. When she saw the crisscrossing network of scars and bandages covering his body, tears streamed down her face in an endless flood, and she could no longer utter a single word. They're just flesh wounds, nothing serious, he said through gritted teeth. Forcing a smile as he took her hand in his, trying to lighten the mood. My wounds will need to be tended to carefully. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble my wife with looking after me. Though she clearly didn't believe his reassurance, she nodded repeatedly, whispering yes 3 times in a row. She urged him to hurry back to the mansion, so they could send for a doctor to treat his injuries at once. Lin Jin nodded at Fang Yang, who was standing outside the carriage keeping watch. At long last, the carriage began to move forward. He had not been home for days. The sound of horse hooves clattering on the blue brick streets felt achingly familiar. The woman beside him had been worn thin by days of anxiety and exhaustion. Now that she saw he was safe and sound, the tension finally drained from her body. Leaning against the carriage wall as it jolted along, her eyes slowly fluttered shut, and she drifted off to sleep. His body racked with pain, Lin Jin moved slowly. Carefully removing his outer robe, he held his breath, gently draping it over her shoulders to keep her warm. He noticed that as the carriage swayed, her head kept bumping against the hard wall. Tentatively, he reached out, carefully supporting her head and guiding it to rest on his shoulder. Gazing down at her peaceful sleeping face, a long-lost sense of tranquility and contentment washed over Lin Jin's heart. The scheming and power struggles of the imperial court faded from his mind. If only for a moment, in this instant, the only sound he could hear was the soft, steady rhythm of her breathing. Lin Jin paused, then slowly lowered his head, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. For the rest of his life, he had no other wishes. He only longed to stay by her side forever, to live out his days with her, as husband and wife, just the two of them, for all eternity.